is 9:30. 9:30 on the East Coast. It's a start of 3.5+ hours nonstop NFL DFS conversation, taking y'all straight up the lock. It is myself, Dean 7904, if you want to get all technical, former $1 million winner, Bobby Gomes. And hey, what have you done for me lately? That's all we care about. We care about this week and this week only. We should acknowledge Tim, TastefulTides. We took down the, I say we, I don't know why I'm saying we, you took down the Spy. Was it the Spy? Several other contests last week. Congratulations to you. Yeah, man. Tell the people. There was a little video as far as you talked about how you did it. I believe that was circulating on the interwebs. But congratulations to you. And let's figure out how to do it again Sunday morning.
Yeah, I took down the Spy. Took down the 444 single entry. So it was a really good week for me. Things kind of just went exactly what I thought. Unfortunately, I pivoted to Josh Downs instead of just going Tank Dell, and that would have won me even more money. But still a really solid week.
It's the most DFS player thing to do. Like, even when you have Smash Week, it's like, how could this have been a little bit better? That's all we do.
It could have been so much better if I just ate the chalk with Tank Dell. It would have been like an extra like $20K probably.
Man, yeah. That's last week was kind of sort of chalk city with Dell. I think Thielen was fairly popular as well. Buffalo chalk defense absolutely smashed. That's what got me. I basically broke even, but like I was on a lot of good plays, but I did not have Buffalo. That was the 25-30 point swing or something like that. Bobby, if you want to touch on last week, by all means, go for it. It is a forward-thinking show. We're talking about this week and this week only. That's all we care about right now. But welcome. Good morning. Thoughts?
Good morning. Last week. Glad it's over. Was not friendly to Bob, It's a difficult slate. But we're back. It's like you said, forward-thinking show. I'm ready to talk week 4 with you guys. This slate is very difficult, in my opinion. I don't know if we want to jump right in right away or we're done with the pleasantries or however we're handling this, but this slate is very, very difficult.
It's tricky because I'm not going to pretend to know who Aiden O'Connell is, but he's throwing footballs and he's 4K on DK. And he really helps open up the salary. He's got a really, really concise wide receiver tree. It's a part of one of the most popular games on the slate as well. And he'll be quarterbacking for the Raiders today, at least according to a report. I assume it's him and not Hoyer, and they're not going to swerve us. But he's super, super cheap. We're talking about him pre-show a little bit. Big arm. By the way, his player profiler, the comp, they do that. This is not going to get you excited over there, but they did his comp just now. It's remember Matt Moore? That's not a sexy name, right? That's his alleged comp. No wheels. He had negative 250 rushing yards in college. He's got to get it done with the arm. Running some optimals. I know our optimizer stuff, our projections were just boosted about a half hour ago or so they are updated as well. And he's hitting some. He's landing on some. We're going to talk about the cash lineup, which incidentally, the cash lineup that we threw up on the screen last week was kind of sort of somewhat what Tim had. But basically, it was like the framework of his lineup that absolutely smashed. But yeah, that's just it was chalk city last week to some degree. But that's one of the big talking points, right, Bobby, as far as the slate. Aiden O'Connell. So the other injuries that were being monitored, Higbee expected to play. Debo expected to play. Miles Sanders expected to play. I think the only thing that's still kind of up in the air, Njoku, like he burned his face last night. I think his arm and his face. Hopefully he's all right, and he's talking about playing, but we'll see. Stay tuned on that. But everything else is basically figured out, I think, as far as who's going to go, who's not going to. No Eli Mitchell. He's not expected to go, which maybe we get CMC like 25, 30 touches against Arizona. That could be a lot of fun if you have some salary. But, yeah, you're ready to go. You're ready to give me like your screenshot as far as the slate. So by all means, I didn't mean to cut you off. What do you got? What are we looking at as far as today, week 4?
Who, me or Tim?
Yeah, that was you, Bobby. You said to go. And,
for me, I think it's like from everything I've run, it seems like it's a pay down at QB, which is something we kind of haven't seen through the first 3 weeks. Aiden O'Connell is now in the mix. I'm kind of lukewarm on Aiden O'Connell. Looks like a good thrower of the football if you know ball and you're watching the tape, like the little bit of YouTube tape that I just watched in the last 30 minutes. He doesn't look terrible, but anyone can doctor a highlight film, right? So I've read tweets too, Dean. I've been in the Twitter sphere, and I've seen some tweets that he was a great preseason QB or whatever. So I guess that means something. Yeah, I don't know. I'm fine with Aiden O'Connell. I think there's a QB that I really like is Stafford. I like Purdy. Those are guys I feel like I'm targeting this week, and I haven't really targeted players like that through the first 3 weeks. It's kind of been a situation where I'm trying to pay up at quarterback because we've had more salaries, been kind of easier to configure, and now we're in a situation where that's not really the case. So yeah, I think it's a pay down a QB and play the right plays. We'll get into them. I got some good ones. Tim, do you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, this whole Aiden O'Connell thing really threw a wrench into my plans for cash games. I'm still not completely convinced that I'm going to roster Aiden O'Connell. I'm really looking to get to Anthony Richardson in cash. I really like that whole game. That's going to be the fastest game on the slate. Projected for the most possessions are the Colts. So I think Anthony Richards at 6,700 on DK. I think he's still my favorite play, but I'm not like, I mean, I'm going to be kind of working on this throughout the day in terms of cash, because I mean, min price, Aiden O'Connell, he's got some good weapons around him. He's got a condensed target tree, so we know where he's going to be throwing the ball. He's definitely viable in cash games. I'm just not 100% sure that's where I'm going to go.
I ran 147 lineups on DK for no particular reason. I picked that number, and I added some tweaks.
That's a weird number to pick. Just saying, you just added the extra 3.
To be fair, I just moved the slider. You know what I mean, and what it lands on.
Okay.
But if it lands on like an even number, I'll move it off the even number because I'm a crazy person. But like, it's on a 7.
You're a weird guy, man. I've come to the conclusion through these first 4 weeks. You're one of the strangest people I've ever met.
It's just 4 weeks. It took 4 weeks to put that together to confirm it. No, that's fair. That's certainly reasonable. But the point I was getting at is, and like I know Tim through producer Steve a shell like cash lineup, and one of the decision points would be a quarterback, obviously, in O'Connell, and I think you gave him Richardson, if I'm not mistaken. He's going to pull it up in a second. But the point I was making here, Tim, is that 16% to Richardson, 14% to Russ Wilson, O'Connell getting 13%, Allen at 10%, Pickett at 7%, Fields 7%. If you're going to be so ballsy, you can play Fields in cash. So interesting for tournaments. But there's no clear and obvious answer. And I think the one you gave him was Richardson, and obviously, the O'Connell thing being confirmed overnight, depending on if you went to bed or not. Yeah, he's super, super cheap. And what can you do with that extra 2K or 3K, depending on? And I guess you're still kind of bouncing back and forth. And take us through that thought process, because I'm curious where you're at. And I believe you gave him Richardson. And what would you do with that extra money if we happen to have it? If we went to O'Connell?
If we went to O'Connell, then we could easily do, Keenan Allen, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams. We could play like the 3 best wide receivers and get a little bit of correlation with O'Connell. If we go higher to guys like Russ or Richardson, I don't think that we can get to those, 3 top wide receivers as easily, or if at all, really. So it's all about what you do at that wide receiver position, if you're going to be pivoting to O'Connell. So, if you go O'Connell, you go Adams, you go Keenan Allen, you've got a nice little game stat going there. So it's interesting. I'm concerned that this might end up being Josh Jacobs' week. They might just, start feeding him the ball instead of letting O'Connell, try to run the show. And that ends up hurting Adams, and it helps Jacobs. So that's kind of like what I'm concerned about in terms of playing O'Connell. Like, I don't think O'Connell is going to win anyone a milli this week. You know, like for cash games, if he gets you 15, is that good enough? I don't know. You know, like the overall position has to stay relatively muted for that to work out, I think.
Let's see. Question here in chat, and this is kind of the conversation we're having. Avril, hey, what's up, chat? Hit that like button, subscribe, turn on those notifications.
Yeah, get those likes up, guys. We got to get these likes up. We're at 200. We got 20 likes. It's not the greatest.
They're still waking up, man. It's you know, the people out there on the West Coast. It's like barely. It's not even what. Hold on, let me do my UCF math. It's not even 7 o'clock on the West Coast. So like they're still kind of waking up. It's all right. But yeah, hit the like button. You're right, Bobby. But they're saying, so I'm supposed to play Richardson. That's the thing, Tim. I don't know if there's any sort of supposed to. Right. It's kind of choose your own adventure. Ideally, I love the Richardson call as well too in the dome. We're expecting the most plays. I'm looking at the blitz game level factors. 134 plays expected in that game. Expect to be playing fast in a dome. He was on his way to absolutely smashing and breaking the slate before he got concussed. He's got the legs. He's got a big arm if he needs it, but really the floor he gets with the legs is phenomenal. Good matchup as well. I love Richardson as well, but according to our projections and just the things I'm running, it's like no clear and obvious path. Bobby, you don't mess with the cash game streets, right? I'm assuming you're just tournaments and only today.
I know I'm playing some small field single entry, so yeah, I have to be a little bit plugged in on the cash game streets today.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind going down to O'Connell just because I worry about how they use Richardson today. He's coming off the concussion. I feel like Richardson and Moss cap each other's ceiling today for whatever reason, just because we really don't know how they're going to use. It's basically a guessing game on how they're going to try to utilize Richardson or Moss, because they both affect each other based on if Richardson's just playing free, then on the goal line, he might get that. He might vulture Moss, or is the coaching staff going to be like, all right, we want to protect Richardson. Let's let Moss not, let's rush it with Moss more. Moss actually has very good props. They're better than Kieran's. But I'm trying to figure out. I don't think I would play Moss and cash. I definitely would prefer Kieran. For Richardson, I think I'd go down to O'Connell just because I think we need the savings if I was playing cash games. But I do like the point that Tim made where this could be a Jacobs week. But in cash games, I will take 15 from O'Connell if I can get it, right? He's at 4K. But I do worry I don't think he's a quarterback that I'm going to play in larger field tournaments. Like Tim said, I don't think he wins you at Millie by any means. I do think that the pivot that we have here from Chase to Adams, I was originally on Adams, and when we were talking before the show, I think Dean and Tim both made a pretty good case that you probably want to play Chase here relative to Adams, just because even if you play O'Connell, well, I don't know, you don't have to stack in cash, right? So you don't have to basically go to Adams there. If O'Connell doesn't get there, then maybe Chase is the better play. I'm kind of stuck in terms of my thought process on that now as we're talking through it on the show. Keenan Allen, I feel as if he's a lock. Freiermuth, I don't want to play Freiermuth at all in tournaments. The play for me is to pay up at tight end if I can. It's a lot of tight end by committees, and then there's a lot of tight ends that I just don't like overall that are projecting well. So I think if you're playing some smaller field stuff or you're playing tournaments and larger field stuff, getting up to Kittle, getting up to Andrews, I think it differentiates you in a good bit. Brown seemed like the cash game defense. A defense I don't think a lot of people are talking about is $100 more to the Patriots versus the Cowboys. Obviously, the Cowboys offense has been very good, but the Patriots defense is also very good. And I feel like it's a good tournament pivot. If I had to give one, yeah. That's pretty much. And Karen Williams for me, he might be someone I'm trying to get away from. I think CMC is the best play on the slate by far. So whatever gets me up to CMC, I don't know if I'm going to pay for these 6K running backs if I don't have to. More on the low 5K, and I'd probably be targeting my backs in tournaments in cash so I get it, obviously.
Bobby, I know sometimes you'll go for it. You'll say, screw it, I'm going to lock button this player in, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I believe week 1 or week 2, I think it was week 2, you lock button Kelsey. The way you're talking about CMC, and he looks spectacular against Arizona. We saw the usage week 1. They pushed back on it like a short week when Mitchell was around. Mitchell not expected to play today. Assuming this game stays fairly tight, he is really well positioned to smash. Is CMC? I know he's super expensive, obviously, but if you're going to take a big stand, is that something you're considering? Just hearing your voice.
I think CMC is I think he's my lock this week. Yeah. So you gave me Kelsey week 2, which was not the greatest week, but week 1 I did lock Tyreek. So
yes.
Yeah. For me, I think CMC is the guy you want to, and he's outside of construction, right? Like you're going to have these everyone's going to, a lot of the ownership's going to be concentrated in the 6K range. And we obviously have a very strong wide receiver position. For me, just giving yourself, getting up to CMC makes a good bit of sense based on how to slightly differentiate construction, but still give yourself a floor. Obviously, CMC is a great floor. Now you're taking Mitchell out, and the ceiling is astronomical.
Tim, you probably can get CMC in cash. We can get it either way. But if you went with this O'Connell, you can get CMC in cash probably. Is that something? Have you considered the other routes? I know we put the one on the screen as far as Richardson. You're kind of bouncing back and forth in your cash lineup, and if you put O'Connell in, I think you can get CMC and you can get Keenan Allen. And, that seems like a pretty good, couple big spends. But the 6K, 5-ish K running backs is pretty strong. It's pretty good. So there's value there, which means like that's probably why you jumped away from it with Moss and Williams and maybe Jacobs, who's not 6K, but also a pretty good spend as well. What are you debating right now? Because I feel like you're probably fidgeting with it. You're kind of bouncing back and forth with O'Connell. And what does he get you is the big question.
Yeah, you could easily play CMC in cash, but you have to sacrifice, I think, some of these big wide receivers that I am going to be prioritizing. So I am not going to be playing CMC in cash games. I absolutely have no problem with what Bobby said, though, about locking him in for tournaments. I think that is a great play because a lot of optimizers are going to be giving you these running backs that are in that 6K range. So it leads you to a different construction. But I think, I'm obviously prioritizing Keenan Allen in cash games, 100% lock. I'm prioritizing Williams at 6K, 100%. And then, after that, I don't know. I don't think I want to go all the way up to CMC for cash games, but for single entries, for large fields, I think he's a great play. Absolutely.
By the way, Freiermuth, I assume you're not married to Freiermuth as far as tight end. Tight end's kind of a wasteland today.
I'm not.
Yeah. He's just kind of sort of there, like if like Tanner Hudson made everything worked in cash, I think that's playable as well. We saw him, I don't want to say get loose, but the absence of Irv Smith for Cincinnati. We know about Cincinnati being presumed likely to be passing the ball today more so than most games as they're facing Tennessee. Tennessee just as that lockdown, rush defense, and looks like the best way to get through Tennessee is passing the ball. He's a super cheap, and the position's so gross that whatever. If he gets you 7 or 8 points, that's fine. He might get you 0. There's no promise, but who's going to do anything?
If Hudson gets you 7 or 8 points, you're looking really good. I was considering playing Hudson in cash, just to punt it. And then I'm also, not to get too far ahead, but I don't think the Browns D is some kind of must play in cash games. I think you could go down to the Panthers even, really, just to save more money. Alex Santi brought up an interesting point in the chat, with the lack of value at flex, how are you going to get up to, some of these guys? And it's well, you can go all the way down to Hudson. You can go down to the Panthers. You can punt off some of these spots and you don't necessarily have to play O'Connell. That's just my opinion. But, I don't think the Browns are some kind of lock, and I don't think Freiermuth's some kind of lock. So getting to Hudson, going to the Panthers just saves you more salary.
You just touched on this. We're going to go game by game in a second. Not every single game, just the 4 or 5 that really, really matter. I'll have my eye on chat if there's some other topics, some other names. We're going to touch on that as well. But we can't really go game by game and everything. It wouldn't be efficient. It wouldn't be productive. But there's like 4 or 5 key games, and we'll talk about some other players. We'll talk about some chalk. Of course, we're here for the next hour and change till we hand it off to Erik Beimfohr and Squirrel Patrol, and they hand it off to crunch time, I believe, about 12:15 or so. But Tim, just take me through that thought process as far as the elite spend-up receivers, because it's a really strong group today. The Keenan Allen spot looks incredible. We saw him last week. And again, that doesn't mean what happened last week is going to happen this week. But again, there's no Eckler. There's no Mike Williams. He's going to get 15 targets, probably. You want to soak up as many targets as possible when you're building your cash lineups. Jefferson's always in the conversation. Diggs versus Miami. That's one of the premier games we'll talk about in a second. And then Jamar Chase against Tennessee. And I guess Adams, right, amongst those first 6. And the argument I was making is like it's really, really close. And I love Devontae Adams. I love how concise that rotation is, or the target tree is there for Vegas. I just don't know how necessary, like if you're looking to like poke holes, I don't know what hole you're going to poke in Keenan Allen, but the hole you can poke in Adams is like, we don't really know what O'Connell is. And maybe he takes a slight hit. And sure, in tournaments, of course, but I put him behind Chase and Allen personally, just for that reason, similar price point. Your thought process as far as the big spend up receivers when it comes to cash specifically.
Yes, it's so strange that for cash, like not even considering Justin Jefferson or Tyreek, even though they're in really good spots, they're amazing receivers. But yeah, it's 100% Keenan Allen in cash games. There's no question about it. Jamar Chase is clearly the 1B for me, but this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Like, can you play Steph Diggs? Can you play Devontae Adams? Or do you want to go down and save? You can save to Puka Nacua, right? At 6,700 in an amazing game environment. You can save all the way down to 4K with Josh Palmer also, I think, in certain kind of constructions. So I'm going 3 expensive wide receivers, but definitely. But I think that there are ways that you can also play Josh Palmer at 4K. Maybe you play him at the flex. I don't know.
Would you play him with Allen together, but both receivers of the Chargers? Like if it kind of just the build made sense, would you be okay with that?
I would. I'd be fine with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with that.
But the NFL game is going on right now in London. I'm not sure what the score is just yet. Atlanta is taking on Jacksonville, and apparently, according to the chat, I guess Disney Plus is doing a Toy Story version. They're making the players look like they're in the Toy Story world, and I'm really curious what that looks like. According to the chat, it looks pretty cool. I don't know. CC Bus says that the broadcast looks wicked cool on TV. That's probably your neighbor, Bobby, or maybe both you guys. Don't they say wicked up there for both you people? I think that's a thing. Is that still something they say or no?
Definitely say wicked. Oh yeah, definitely.
I feel like that's a little overblown. I don't know.
It's a New England thing, is it not?
We definitely say wicked.
Maybe like a New England suburbs thing, or I don't know.
All right. Well, in Maine they say it apparently. Wicked spot.
Yeah. Wicked spot. Wicked spot.
I feel like in like the 90s, maybe when Tim was roaming the streets
from in Southie. Yeah. I watched too much Good Will Hunting. Apparently, you're saying it's not based on a true story. Good Will Hunting. All right, fair enough. Hey, let's do game by game. Let's talk about it. The most important game probably in the slate. Well, when it comes to total, it's Miami versus Buffalo. From a watchability perspective, this game should be fun as well. 53.5 is the total. Buffalo's got a team total above 28. Miami's team total above 25. It's high and it's tight. The Dolphins on the road this week. No illegal advantage, whatever you want to call it, at home with the throwing the opponents in the scalding heat. So they got to go on the road and take on the Bills, coming off the 70 burger. Bobby, what are we seeing as far as Miami Buffalo? Certainly, this game amongst the 12 on the slate is one of the more appealing ones. How are you handling it?
Yeah, so I bet it. First straight bet, legally made straight bet. And of my career, I guess, on the DK Sportsbook, I took Miami money line. Hopefully that goes well. Some beginner's luck. But yeah,
people in New England would say that's wicked spot.
That's wicked smart. Yeah. Yep. No, so for me, it's pace up, right? And I think these running backs are going to get lost in translation in terms of ownership on both sides. We had an interesting Achan tweet that they're going to try to utilize it more. I kind of figured that maybe Mostert's utilization would kind of take a slight hit, and Achan's would be bumped up anyways. Achan finds himself at 5'7". I know he's coming off the 3 touchdowns, and I don't usually chase, but I think the kid's a very, very good talent, and everything that they do is just like they're just doing stuff that's so outside the box, and he just fits everything that they want to do. His ceiling, regardless, in regards to the people that are in his salary range that are hitting optimals, I feel like is so much higher, right? Because he can just take one like he did. We've seen in the fourth quarter last week. He's running like a sub 4.340. Like, would you rather have him or Jamal Williams at the end of the day? You know what I mean? Like, that's what the question is for me. I think, yeah, the projection, people are going to play Jamal Williams, and I'm going to play Achan. There are other running backs in that range. Obviously, Kieran, like, Achan's in a committee, but I'm fine with it just because of the pace of that game. So he'd be my favorite. I think James Cook gets in the end zone this week. I know that's been an issue. They're running like a committee at the goal line with 2 running backs that really have no real rhyme or reason to be in the game at that point after Cook gets them all the way down the field. I think that switches. So I like Cook a little bit. And then the receivers, like Tyreek's expensive, but Waddle's had some very good games versus Buffalo. I know he's coming back from concussion, so he's the guy I like a lot. Diggs, I think, is in a great spot on the Bills side. The two, so here's the thing about the tight end position, like Knox and Kincaid are projecting well, but they're in a tight end by committee. So like, why in terms of construction, why would I want to get to that, right? Like, why would I just pay up? There's so many like bad tight ends that I'm seeing hit optimals. Just makes me want to get to like a Kittle or an Andrews or a Goddard for that matter, who's no one's going to play. That's kind of how I'm thinking about this game, like where the brightest spots are in terms of construction for the Buffalo-Miami game.
Like Devin Achan is listening, and he's like, "How dare you? You took away one of his touchdowns." They went double Al Bundy Polk High game. Mostert and Achan each dropped 4 touchdowns last week. Just completely insane. But yeah, the point you're making is really solid. And obviously, Jamal Williams not playing today, but you're just generic plotter running back who's like
Javonte Williams. Sorry, not Jamal Williams. I'm stuck in the 90s. I'm sorry.
Jamal Williams is not that old, but yeah.
Oh, Jamal Anderson. I was thinking, wow, whoa,
is that what you're thinking about?
Get some likes up, so the West Coast get the likes up and try to wake us up a little bit.
I think somebody will stick their leg back. I'm looking at the counter. I think it just went in reverse.
That's not good. That's not nice. That's not nice.
Tim, your thoughts as far as Miami Buffalo? If you're stacking, right, you're making one stack with this game. Are you starting with Tua or are you starting with that one?
I'm actually going to start with Tua. I just think that his pass attempts are just sky high, solid. I mean, he's not a good rusher at all. But go Tua, go Tyreek or Waddle. I have no interest in this Miami rushing situation now. We have Mostert projected for 9.7 rush attempts. We have Achan projected for almost 9. Like, this is clearly going to be a 1A, 1B. We saw the report from Scheffner saying they're going to start giving the ball to Achan more now. So I think it's going to be Tua and Tyreek or Waddle for me. And then I really like that Cook call for the Bill run it back with Cook. That's the way that I would go about stacking this game. Depending on how many lives you're making, I agree with Bobby about that tight end situation for Buffalo, but I think that they're both viable for large field GPPs. Like they're going to be out there running routes in a really, really great game environment. So I also, I think a guy like Gabe Davis is interesting. And then, I mean, if you go to a Tyreek, it's going to be really hard to add in Diggs. Like, if you can do it, go for it, but that's going to be pretty tough to do.
Yeah. Trying to see if there's anything else of note as far as this game. Yeah. Are you going to be over the field, Tim, in tournaments, or how many lineups are you making today? I know you stick to 2 or 3.
3, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with this game.
Yeah.
I actually don't think I'm going to be playing much of it, to be honest with you. Other than perhaps like a one-off of Diggs or a one-off of Tyreek, but I don't know. Maybe I'll do a Tua Tyreek stack because I really do like Tua quite a bit.
I'm not going to hold you to it, but like you're making 3 lineups. But if you're making like a game stack, I feel like I'm hearing you like you want to stack like Rams-Colts first. I feel like that's what I'm hearing. Not to put words.
Yeah, I'm going to take a final look at ownership though, because I'm worried that game might get kind of steam for ownership because it seems to be like a lot of like really easy plays to make in that game, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of worried that game might become very popular. While we're talking about ownership, there is one guy I am locking in, and that's Keenan Allen in all 3. So I don't care how high owned he is.
What's the I meant to look to see what his over, like what his total was or his betting number for receptions is. So in my head, I feel like it should be like, I don't know, 8.5, which you rarely see it that high. But like, shouldn't it be?
I believe I saw it at one point was 7.5, but I'm not positive what it is now.
Let's pull this up. Now I'm curious. I feel like it should be. I feel like he's getting 8, and I assume you think he's getting 8 as well because you're locking him in your 3 lineups.
We have him projected for 12 targets and 8.33 receptions and 98.89 receiving yards. So that is quite a projection for under 8K. He's definitely going to be in 3 of 3.
7.5 is the number. Depending on where you're shopping, it's different, but it looks like BetMGM is the best spot to bet the over. You can get over 7.5 at -105. There you go, Bobby. You can have a second wager. I don't know, not to kind of bully you into it, but how do you feel about that? Over under 7.5 catches for Keenan Allen today.
I like the over. It would actually be a 6th wager because I bet all the alternate spreads up to plus 2.5 for the -2.5 for the Dolphins. So yeah,
every half a point or every 1 point. I got every 1 point, I guess, right?
Every 1 point, yeah. So money line,
like
Dolphins -1, Dolphins -1.5, Dolphins -2, Dolphins -2.5. Yeah.
Is this like a Dolphins fan like show now? Like I'm like a de facto Dolphins fan. I just love watching them play. They're just fun. And like
I'm a McDaniels guy. I'm a McDaniel guy too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, but that offense is just like, there's some football it's like not great. And
I'm not a bandwagon either, but I've liked McDaniel for like 3 or 4 years now. I was wondering why he hadn't got a coaching job sooner.
You were a McDaniel guy back when he was on San Fran because I wasn't aware of him on San Fran. I'll be honest.
I was when he was the OC on San Fran. Yeah, Dean. It was.
Yeah, I didn't hear him speak. I mean, I knew of his existence, but I never really saw his quotes and stuff. But he is spectacular. All right, next game. Let's talk about this next game. It's we kind of teased it earlier. Vegas at the Chargers, big boy total as well, 48.5. Another one that's pretty high, reasonably tight. But every Charger game ends in 3 points anyway. You're supposed to bet Vegas here, right? Because you're getting 6 points right now. Did the line move with O'Connell? It's we're looking at 6.5 here. Aiden O'Connell taking on Justin Herbert. Josh Kelly, we have to at least acknowledge his existence. I know somebody in the bold calls was calling the flop flag. What is this? The martingale for Josh Kelly. Eventually, he's going to get there, I suppose. Maybe today is the day. That is the ultimate sort of leverage play, I suppose, if you're going to get away from Keenan Allen. That all of a sudden now Josh Kelly or Isaiah Spiller or somebody goofy like that gets a couple of touchdowns. So Bobby, I'll let you start this one as well. Vegas at the Chargers. How do we feel about this game?
Yeah, I kind of like Kelly in the flop flag spot a little bit. Yeah, I kind of like Kelly in the flop flag spot a little bit. Quentin Johnson at 3.7. I think he's a very strong play. Kellen Moore wants to throw it deep. Not like a very strong play where he's going to see a ton of targets, but he is the third receiver there. So in large field stuff, make sure he's in your pool. I also really like Joshua Palmer, and I feel like he's someone you have to consider for cash games. I just think he's a really good talent. So don't mind him. And yeah, I think Keenan Allen's like an obvious play where You want to get him all over the place in terms of your construction. His target share is already very high. I think it's like 33%. I don't know if it can increase anymore. But yeah, or like 36%. And he's just been fantastic. So I don't mind Keenan. The one I think question mark would be Kelly, and I'm fine with playing Kelly. I also prefer Gerald Everett to Parham today. And I'm gonna shout out Lip in chat because Lip, he's on his stuff sometimes, and he likes Everett. So I'm gonna go with Everett at 3.6 over Parham. I know Parham's having the better year. It looks like Parham is going to be the tight end of the future, but obviously, just for this 1 week, I like Everett.
I was digging into that stuff earlier in the week, and like Parham, I think he had 2 catches for 4 yards and 2 touchdowns last week, 2 targets as well. Everett had more routes run, more participation. I think more balls possibly thrown his way. I kind of agree with it. I also think you can play Parham at 2.8 just because he's tight end and tight end's a wasteland. And if he gets in the end zone, great, fine. Get your 10 points and you'll move on. So yeah, I see it both ways. Bring in Tim here. The other thing is with the Raiders, I guess O'Connell's going to be reasonably popular, and it's super, super clear and obvious. You pair him with Devontae, if you want to double pair him with Myers as well. The combination of those two have sucked up so many of the receptions. Now it's a different quarterback, so maybe it changes a little bit, but I can't imagine all of a sudden like Hunter Renfrow is going to be a thing. It's still probably Adams and Myers. And, Tim, what we were talking about earlier in the show, maybe it's just Jacobs. They just trust Jacobs. And, Josh Kelly, a cash du jour, a terrible play the last several weeks. If you want to keep telling yourself the story, I think most people are just saying no now. And there's also a lot of good contention in that 5K zone. So he's not going to get a ton of ownership. So I don't think he's a crazy pivot in tournaments. Your thoughts here, Tim? Raiders, Chargers.
Definitely not a crazy pivot in tournaments at all. I'm not going there, but I can see if people are, building out 20 teams or more, you could definitely get to some Kelly. I think there's a lot of different ways you can stack this game. I think you could go Herbert doubles. I think you go O'Connell doubles. I really do want to, touch on what Bobby said about Quentin Johnson. He's projected for 1 fewer target than Josh Palmer, and Quentin Johnson is going to be 2% versus Palmer's 20%. So I really, really love the Johnson pivot in GPPs. Palmer's definitely the more safer play for cash, but I think that's a really solid play for large field. Everett, Parham, both great. You could definitely mix and match those guys in your GPP pool. Not going to get to either one of them in cash. And then, the Raiders side is just the more difficult side for me. Like, I'm still thinking that I'm going to be playing more Jacobs than I am O'Connell Adams. That's just my take. Could be way, way, way off. Definitely, I definitely wouldn't be fading them, fully in like a 20 max, but I'm leaning more towards Jacobs in this game.
Bobby, I know you're a big best ball influencer. You probably have some Quentin Johnston best ball shares, don't you? He was kind of popular during best ball season.
I do. I do.
Yeah.
I have. I'm actually one of the worst best ball influencers, but I will say
depending on the week,
I have a lot of Quentin Johnson. So I think that makes me one of the worst based on the narrative around Quentin Johnson in the best ball streets. But yeah, I think, yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's like we care about this week and this week only. And this week, it seems like Palmer is well ahead of Johnston. But Johnston should get some more routes. Now, there's also people talking about, maybe they're going to run 2 tight ends with Everett and Parham. We'll see how that goes down. And by the time week 14 rolls around, theoretically, Johnston will have unseated Palmer and become the number one. Like this, there's a huge draft equity there. I think Johnston was the number 1 pick, if I'm not mistaken, but not number 1 and number 2, a second rounder. Not a big draft guy, but I know he was heavily hyped coming out of, I think, somewhere in Texas, if I'm not mistaken, one of the Texas schools.
I think he was a first round pick. Pretty positive.
Yeah, I think he was a first rounder too. I didn't want to misspeak, but it's 10-0 Jags, by the way, in Andy's room. Thank you for the update.
Ridley touchdown like 10 minutes ago.
Revenge touchdown. Was there anything more obvious than Ridley getting the touchdown? The only thing more obvious than that is London getting a touchdown.
Down in London.
Yeah. I was waiting for somebody to finish that because I'm certainly not the first person, the first thing you've heard. Mr. Richards asking about Johnson as a value play. Yeah, so he's certainly viable. The safer play, as you guys kind of alluded to, is Palmer, but I think Johnson probably has a bigger ceiling.
I will say this, like the best ball, like if you just thought Keenan Allen or Mike Williams were going to stay healthy the entire season and you just didn't take shots on some of these receivers, like what have we seen the last 4 years between the two of them? Like they're always hurt. So
did you see the video of the counselor? Is that what you're doing right now? Do you know what the counselor is or who the counselor is?
I saw the video. I feel like the counselor gets like a bad rap from these like higher ups in the fantasy world industry. I feel like, you know what I mean?
Doing that that's not authentic. He's being a clown on purpose, right?
No, 100% he is. 100%. Yeah.
Okay. So the bad rap, but that's the thing.
I kind of feel bad for him because it's like there's all these like industry elites taking shots at him. He's obviously just let him do what he's doing, you know?
But it's like the Skip Bayless thing. Like he's saying something absurd, but guess what? He's elevated. Like other people are elevating him, and now more people know now we're talking about the counselor, and he just
on an
talks
RG
all
show.
nonsense.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I don't know how. If you can tell me, if anybody can tell me, how do you dunk on like people making ridiculous takes without them benefiting from you dunking on them? Because I don't think it's been done.
You know, I get it. Yeah, it's true. Like the engagement definitely goes up.
Yeah.
I feel like Overzet used to like bully him for like 3 years constantly, and it was just like, all right, we get it. It's a bit, and you know what I mean. Like, I don't know, I felt bad for the guy.
You say bullying him, but it helped him, didn't it?
It helped him, yeah. It helped him, but it's like, I don't know. It's like more condescending, in my opinion.
Does Tim know what we're talking about? Question.
No, there's no idea.
No idea. Didn't think so.
I'm answering questions in the chat.
Oh, look at you, man of the people. The problem is, though, if I go over to the chat and I start asking questions, and then there's a redundancy. But I do. Is that Brit? There's a Brit D with a wrench. He's going to be on later.
I believe that is Brit.
Oh, he's talking. We mentioned revenge and Zeke touchdown. How mad is Jameis at Carr that Carr is going to play? Outrageous. You got to give Jameis his revenge game.
I think they just added Jameis back to this being the starter.
Is Carr not? I thought Carr was likely to play. Is that changed? Is that flip flop?
I think it changed. I might be wrong. I might have got the wrong. It was a long night, Dean. I have a 16-month-old. You know what I mean? But I think it was.
Okay. Yeah. I thought that you got to give Jameis the revenge game. Come on, man.
We still have Carr and projections.
Oh, we have Carr, so it's probably Carr. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Carr.
Unless
I seen like an underdog notification, but maybe I'm just behind.
Yeah, and they all sort of sprinkle in, and there's the Schefter stuff coming in at all times, and you never really know what's most up to date. I'm pulling up, by the way, our bold calls. I did drop this link in chat. The one who gets the boldest, the most accurate prediction, I will hook you up with a week free of RG Premium. Answer that. By the way, here Don Yeezy saying that Derek Carr will start according to
Carr expected to start 18 minutes ago. I don't know where I see this Jameis. Someone I don't know.
Come on,
Sorry
man.
about that.
That's not right. I feel bad, Jameis. Give him a chance, or at least trade him to the Jets. Let him play somewhere.
He'd be good. He'd be fantastic on the Jets.
Like it's ridiculous. The Jets just throwing the season away with like a top 3 defense. Okay,
Jameis was definitely better than Carr, right?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Tim,
I mean,
I wouldn't say he's definitely better.
If Carr is really hurt, wouldn't you rather just play Winston? Right? That's my thing.
Yeah. No, me too. That's how
so
I feel.
Eric saying, is Jameis not playing? We don't think so. We're not certain, but we don't think he's going to play. Alex says Jameis is more fun than Carr. That is 100% true.
Definitely 100% true.
I would definitely like to grab a beer with Jameis over Carr.
Yes.
Or some crab.
I really miss playing him and having him throw, 4 TDs and 3 interceptions. Like that was so much fun.
Well, the greatest was when you roster Winston and his defense, and that was like optimal. It was like spectacular. And we talked about it in the Pick Six show. I didn't even remember. It was 30 for 30. He had 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions like that 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. Just spectacular. So David Lynch says on the Twitter, Josh Kelly, 2 touchdowns and the 100-yard bonus. That is a bold call.
Ooh.
I was looking at some of these bold calls, by the way. Matthew says Aiden O'Connell is a top point per dollar quarterback today. That's not a bold call. That's not bold.
Yeah, it's not bold. That is like what he is currently.
He's projected to be that, right?
Yeah.
If Matthew's out there listening, update that bold call. It's not good enough. And you got to come strong. Let's see. We're going to talk about a couple more games in a second, but feel free to interject if you guys have a thought as far as these bold calls. Kevin May. Oh, go ahead.
Can I say the Kelly one? Like,
yeah.
We've kind of already hit on this, but like Kelly's in that range too, where he's not going to be owned. He's in a very good game environment. All the narrative on him pass blocking. Like if he gets these 2 touchdowns, like Javonte Williams is trending down in that offense in terms of like his total market share. If people are going to play Javonte and you play Kelly, it could be a very good pivot. Even it's like $100 difference, you know.
Kamara's coming back today, and you mentioned Jamal Williams earlier in the show. Jamal, of course, is not playing. Tony Jones stinks. They have the rookie there, you know, who debuted last week, but I'm really curious to what they're going to give Kamara right out the gate. I assume he's like good to go. Kevin's saying here, Tim, Kamara comes back 150 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. That is bold, and I think a lot of people are going to be kind of in wait and see mode, especially with a lot of reasonable options right around him. How do you feel about Kamara in tournaments?
I was kind of surprised, Dean, to see him at 8% owned. Like I thought he'd be a little bit lower. We haven't projected for 14 points. You know, like that's a pretty solid projection. So yeah, I mean, I know 8% is not a ton, but I actually thought that he'd be a little bit lower because I thought more people would be in wait and see mode. But seems like he's going to get a little bit of ownership, but not enough to scare me away from playing him.
You got to take care, Bobby. It seems like a good thing if you're making a bunch of lineups to lean in and be a little bit over if you can. But I guess the number is 8%, which is not nothing, but it's not too high either. It's an interesting thought, but yeah. What's your official take?
I could definitely play Kamara at 16%. I could definitely play Kamara at 16%. 6,100, like that's what. So you play him at 16 if he's 8. Yeah, I can do that. And Kieran Williams is 6K, like he's only $100 more. That I think is a pretty good pivot off of Kieran. Although I do like I said at the top, I like Stafford and I like the Rams today. But yeah, I feel like the way you attack this Tampa defense is running the football currently. Kamara kind of regressed as a rusher last season. But who knows? Like he's in a spot where they could try to run the ball more today based on like Carr's situation. And yeah, I like Kamara at that price.
All right. You mentioned your love of the Rams, the Colts. So wild. We no longer have like these workhorse type running backs, but the ones we do have are Zach Moss and Kyren Williams, which is so wild. This is probably the last week for Moss, I guess. It looks like Taylor probably comes back. We'll see. Stay tuned. Be careful about this week only. Kyren Williams they're putting him to work so much that he's on like punt return stuff there for the Rams. Bobby, 45.5 is a total here. Rams at Colts. Colts 1-point favorites. It's a pretty inexpensive game too. Richardson at 6-7 on DK. You mentioned Stafford a couple times. Certainly Stafford, and like his targets are pretty clear and obvious with Puka and Tutu. Higbee is a perfectly fine tight end. He was questionable earlier in the week. He's going to give it a go. He's expected to play. Yeah. Well, where do you want to start as far as Rams Colts? It sounds like you have interest in both sides of this game.
Yeah. So more on the Rams side, Puka getting those like short area targets. The Rams offensive line hasn't been the greatest through the first 3 weeks. And he's getting a lot of first look targets. So I like Puka a ton at 6,700. I think you could drop down to him in cash games, like Tim said. I think this is a good play. And then Tutu at 5.5. If you want to beat the Colts, you can beat them deep. So if Stafford gets a little bit of protection, like those explosive plays are going to be there. So I like that double stack and getting away from Kieran, but I also like playing Kieran as well because we know how utilized Kieran is in terms of his market share in the Rams offense. But I do think there are pivots around him to where you can get away. He did bust in an island game, I feel like. Well, not really bust, but he didn't play he doesn't seem like he's a great running back. He just seems like he's all they have, right? But that can be enough at a 6K salary, obviously. So I wouldn't completely fade Karen, but I don't think I'm taking an overweight stance there. I'd rather take an overweight stance on Stafford, where I think they might come a little bit lower owned as a stack, especially now that you're getting Aiden O'Connell and you're getting more value in like this lower QB range. I think there's already a ton of value there, but I think it's going to be relatively spread out anyways at the QB position for what it's worth. But yeah, I like Stafford. I feel like there's upside. The blitz has them in terms of their game factors is the one that's going to be the most up in pace and run the most plays. So I think Stafford makes a ton of sense today.
Tim, what do you got as far as this game? I'm curious if you pick one or the other in cash, Kyron or Moss. And I think we had this conversation last week. We were talking about, well, Moss isn't very good, but like we don't care if he's going to get the ball 25 times. We'll take our chances, right?
In my opinion, it's a completely different story this week with Richardson back. You know, he might steal some goal line work from Moss. So I am much higher on Kyron Williams than I am on Moss. Moss is fine for tournaments. I will not be rostering Moss in cash games this week. He probably will not be in my primary team. I think it's a completely different dynamic having a rushing quarterback instead of having Minshew as your quarterback. So I don't think Moss is going to get that 32 carries and all the goal line work like he did, last week. So for me, it's Williams over Moss. I really like Bobby's take on Stafford. I think that's a really strong, leverage play. Play Stafford, Tutu, or Nakua. And then you can run it back with Moss in a GPP and then fade Williams. And I think that's a completely way of flipping the build. So, and it's affordable. Stafford's going to be extremely low owned. This is an amazing game environment. So I think I'm considering Stafford in one of my 3 lineups today.
You got to pick a Colts receiver. Is it
Josh Downs or Michael Pittman?
Yeah. Your running back Downs. I guess you can play Granson as a tight end just because tight end's gross, but I don't feel great about it. Bobby, did you give a take on that as far as your favorites? Like you can play Richardson naked if you want to, I think. I don't think you have to pair him with anybody, but you don't have to, but you can. Yeah. Bobby, if you're pairing Richardson with somebody, who are you pairing him with?
Probably Pittman or Pierce. I just think Josh Downs' short area targets would be in it. Like Richardson's accuracy might be an issue, whereas it worked well with Minshew last week. I do think Downs is good. But Pierce for tournaments, I think his ADOP's like 16 yards or so, where Josh Downs is like 5 or 6. So yeah.
Want to hit some of these questions in chat. Sorry, I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
For me, it's by far Pittman, but between the two, I think I'd lean Pierce over Downs this week just for the QB change.
Let's see. I got a couple more games to discuss game by game. We'll do some like good chalk, bad chalk, whatever's on chat's mind. This is just the appetizer until we hand it off to, the GPP Final Takes of Erik Beimfohr and SquirrelPatrol. Let's see. Bobby, Jeffrey wants to know how much playing time will Cam Akers get, with a lot of question marks.
We have him projected for 2.4 rushing attempts and 9 rushing yards and 1 target. So not a lot, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I might take the over on 2.4, but I'm not playing him is the bottom line.
Would you take the over on 4 rushing attempts, 5 rushing attempts? I'm just curious, I don't think he's going to get a lot of time.
No, I don't think he's getting more than unless something goofy happens. Well, we know about Madison. Madison's on thin ice, right? They did trade for Akers. Minnesota's a desperate team. Both these teams are desperate teams. Minnesota, Carolina, both 0-3. Kind of, sort of, basically a loser leaves town kind of game, right? You're going to be 0-4 after this one. Somebody is, unless they tie, the unlikely scenario. And Madison's been horrific, but it still seems to be his job. He keeps fumbling. He's been inefficient, but Akers wasn't great either. And they got him for nothing, like a 7th rounder or something. And I thought Chandler was the guy that can step up and take that job. And they look pretty good, at least in the, Bobby, you were talking about like certain guys, you get a mixtape, somebody cuts it up for you, cut it right, everybody looks good. I thought Chandler looked good in his mixtape that I saw, but I guess they don't love him, at least not yet. But bottom line is we're not playing Akers. Bobby JC, what's going on with Henry? Yeah, what is this the month October? What's the Henry-tober? What's the December, right? Is that December?
It's like December. It's not cold enough yet. He is 7,400, but he's being like out targeted by Spears pretty significantly. I think Henry's just a little dusty. I also don't think this team really pushes back enough versus Cincy, which gives me a little pause on Burrow. I do like Burrow stacks. Chase, Higgins, I think those guys make a ton of sense based on Tennessee being a pass funnel. But yeah, I just don't worry. I don't think that Tennessee's going to be able to push back to make this game worth it for us to be game stacking it. So
their number 2 receiver is not playing either. Like, do we think he's hitting some optimals, Bobby? And like, speaking of best balls, I took a stand. I have 0 Hopkins in best ball. I thought he was a little bit dusty, and I hate the quarterback situation for him, but he is pretty cheap, and he is a good run back, and I like Burrow a good bit today. Burrow and Chase and Higgins. I expect they're going to pass the ball around. I think Burrow's got a decent shot hitting that 300 bonus. Do we like Hopkins as a run back today? Is Okonkwo I'm okay with as well, just because he's super cheap and it's tight end and who cares? But are you thinking about Hopkins? I don't want to play Hopkins, but like
I like Hopkins.
Be targeted a lot.
I like him for 5,800, projected for 8.5 targets. I think that's pretty decent. 65 receiving yards. I kind of like that. I would also agree, though, with Bobby that I'm not sure they're going to give much pushback. So I don't know. But I do love that price quite a bit.
Just bet Cincy, by the way. They're like 2-point favorites if you think that they're going to,
right,
dominate
I know.
the game. Yeah, it's different conversation, but yeah.
And I think it's going to be a very, very, pretty slow-paced game. So, but still, that price is really, really good.
Slowest game on the board as far as game plays.
The
game is expected to play according to the blitz. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured it'd be pretty slow. Yeah, okay, yeah. But still, Bobby, that price is good. Sorry, Bobby, go ahead.
No, I feel the same way Tim does. Like 5,800 is fine. I think him and Shag will both make my player pool, but for the same reason that you guys just gave. Like, I don't think this game plays fast enough. And in the blitz, it's basically saying game level factors, what you guys, not to reiterate everything, but it's going to play extremely slow. So I don't think you need to go out of your way to try to game stack this game.
We don't want to talk about this game, but I think we're supposed to talk about this game. Denver at the Bears, 46.5 is the total. Denver, I don't know how this is possible. They gave up 70 points last week. This week they're on the road, and they're 3.5-point favorites. If you're wondering how bad the Bears are, that's insane to me. Just like knowing just that and that only. But yeah, Tim, your thoughts here. Denver, Chicago, 46.5. I see people are excited to play Fields. Russ is expected to do some things against this team. A lot of cheap pieces. Javonte Williams is pretty cheap. Who knows how much he's going to get as far as that timeshare with Pirine. They even added McLaughlin on occasion. Super annoying. Troutman was a big 0, I believe, when it opened up for him as far as tight ends. Sutton and Judy are fine. Theoretically, they should let Mims do his thing, but it's just not happening just yet. I don't know why, but although he's been their best receiver, while like being on the field for like 10% of their snaps or something goofy like that. Yeah, Tim, Denver, Chicago. This is going to be a weird. It could be 33-32. It could be 13-14. I don't know what to expect, but it's 2 bad defenses and a lot of cheap pieces.
Yeah, I do have some interest in Fields and Wilson. The problem with Wilson is that like a lot of his stats have come in that garbage time against Miami and that Hail Mary, right? That he threw in week 1, I think. So like he really hasn't been that good. If he's really going to be 5% owned, which I think he's going to be a little higher than that actually. I guess he's okay. I prefer Justin Fields just because of the rushing upside. At any time, he could break off a 70-yard run, right? And then you have to have him at 6,600. He's a really good pivot off of Anthony Richardson. But this game, it's like I am really not sure like how to stack it, right? Like there's nobody that I really want to stack Fields with, and I guess you could stack Wilson with Sutton, maybe. That would probably be my favorite, but I'm really having a hard time figuring out how to stack this game.
Bobby?
I hate this game.
Same.
Yeah.
I think it matters, though.
I think what you said is
it does
is
matter.
key.
It does matter.
A lot of like the touting that we've heard about this game is really based on like Wilson's playing garbage time. So I don't know if I want to play much Russ. In terms of Fields, like we're just chasing Fields and he just looks awful. There are two sneaky plays I do really like though. Because I think a lot of the construction is really based on that low value running back play. If you're playing large field stuff, get Herbert and get Roschon Johnson in your player pool if you're building multiple teams. I think Herbert at 4.7, he's just too cheap. He has good props. I would rather play him than Javonte Williams. Roschon Johnson seems like he's eventually going to take that backfield away from Herbert. So I think he's in play if it happens this week. And if you're playing multiple teams, you can kind of take that risk. But yeah, everything else, like I don't like Marvin Mims. Is his usage going to increase? That's what people are saying. But can we assume rational coaching? I don't really think so. It seems like it's a wide receiver by committee there. Like they're using little Jordan Humphreys and all these other guys when they have Cortland, Judy, and just Mims. That's all it should be. Like those other guys shouldn't even see the field. I don't know why they see
Brandon
the field.
Johnson.
Yeah, just guys that shouldn't be on the field. Cole Kmet, I think, is someone that you can play. DJ Moore is going to get shadowed by Surtain, I would imagine. He's obviously not Tyreek Hill, but yeah, I think a lot of the context of everything that's going on in this game is basically overblown by Miami dropping 70 on Denver when Miami just might be that good to where they can drop 70 on Denver. I don't think Chicago's anywhere close to that. They're probably the worst offense in the league. So I don't know. I'm kind of confused on what to do with this game.
I really think this game busts.
That's me too. Like I feel like if I had
my lean. Obviously, I could be completely wrong. But
defense?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think you could play. Aren't the Bears D like 2,700 at home, right? I think that's viable in GPPs at least.
Yeah. By the way, pick 6 for the Jags. Jags up 17-0, 4 minutes to go in the second quarter of the game in London. Desmond Ridder, still terrible. 6 for 9 for 53 yards. And by the way, no catches just yet for the tight end for Atlanta. Pitts, good Lord. Like they cannot manufacture him any catches. That's so strange. But okay. Jacksonville up big early, and we've seen a Ridley touchdown as well against his former team. Still about 20-25 minutes till we hand it off to Erik Beimfohr and Squirrel Patrol. We snuck this one in here. I think you added this one here, Tim, if I'm not mistaken. Pittsburgh at Houston. I know some optimals we're talking about, at least earlier, or at least I think still some are kind of hitting for Pickett. He's kind of sort of someone interesting against Houston. Houston, we're getting Stroud's look good so far, and small samples look pretty solid. Tank Dell has paid off his salary basically every single week. It's gone up incrementally, but I think Calvin Austin is kind of an interesting cheapie if you're looking for a cheapie pivot. Calvin Austin's probably one of those guys. And there's another interception for the Jags. But what do you have here, Tim, as far as Pittsburgh and Houston? What do we want to talk about this game?
Yeah, you kind of nailed on the pieces that I wanted to talk about. I think that this is a very kind of like cheap stack that is very viable in tournaments. Pickett's only going to be 5%. He's got cheap wide receivers that you can pair him with. We've got good run backs with Tank Dell for Houston. I think that this game is very affordable, and then you can pay up for like Bobby said earlier, somebody like CMC, you can still get to guys like Keenan or Chase, so you can get a decent game environment with good salaries and still get to those expensive guys and make a contrarian build.
What do you got here,
Deshaun
Bob, as
Watson
far as
will
this
not
goes?
start at QB for the Browns week 4.
Who's their backup?
Wow.
That kid in the preseason is actually very good. So I would immediately move to him from O'Connell.
Really?
If you're in
Okay.
cash,
Oh,
yeah.
I know who
Immediately
you're
move
talking
to
about.
him.
I know who you're talking about.
Well, I'm going to pull it up now because that Dorian Thompson Robinson.
Yeah.
That name's, and he can move, right? I think he can move.
Yeah,
Not mistaken.
Yeah, he
think
definitely can move.
Yeah, I think he's a much more talented quarterback than O'Connell.
Is he 4K also? Let's see. He's 4.6 on DK.
I can pay the 600.
Interesting. Yeah, you get 2 last names for the 4,600. How can he throw? What's his? I know he's a rookie, right? I'm fairly certain. I just saw something about him when he was playing in preseason. Mr. Richard saying he's the UCLA quarterback. I think he is, actually, because I got a friend of mine who's a UCLA fan. I think that's how I'm familiar with this guy. But okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because Watson, I think, had a contusion, I think they said. They were saying he was likely to play, but okay, that's interesting. That meme, like where like the guy's looking at the girl and the other one, is it over our shoulder? Is that O'Connell? And now we're looking at this Robinson character? Is that what's happening?
That is what's happening, Dean. All the projection guys in the industry just did a double take.
Oh my gosh! But how do you project this? I'm curious what Jamino and the team is going to be. What they're going to do for this, and yeah, obviously they're going to work on the projection soon, and we'll figure it out. But I don't have like an immediate take. But just you give me a quarterback, not knowing anything else about him. He's 4.6 and he can run. I'm interested. I'm interested. Yeah. Tim, your initial thoughts?
I'm waiting to see confirmation from this news. I'm not seeing anything on Twitter.
Seeing it on Underdog.
Okay.
Oh, that's a pretty good source.
Yeah, I was just seeing if Scheffner reported it or not.
Huh. That's and there was a thing with Watson where he was like there was a legit injury.
Oh yeah, no, he was definitely banged up.
I would easily go up to this kid now if I'm playing.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I mean we have time to make that decision. Wait for it to be official. I don't think it's official yet.
Would it not be Underdog reporting it? It seems like it would be pretty official, right?
It says Josina. I think that's is that Josina Anderson, the reporter? That might be who it is who's reporting it. So maybe if I can find her Twitter account, but I assume it's just correct because it's Underdog and they're not going to screw us up.
Right.
Let's see. Josina Anderson just found her Twitter account. I'm told it's being determined entering the game versus the Ravens that Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson is not playing per source. This is 4 minutes ago on Twitter from Josina Anderson. So, and she's a legit reporter. So I assume this is real, right? So,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How many times has the slate been flipped on its head? It's back to its feet now. The slate.
I feel like this is like an NBA slate at this point, and I don't know what it is, but it's like tiring me out for whatever reason.
Alex is asking about Kareem Hunt is interesting. Yeah, maybe they run the ball more with like Ford and Hunt.
No, this kid's gonna play, dude. There was talent there. Like he might be better than Watson.
Yeah, he's 40.
I mean, what does that say though?
No, nothing. It doesn't say anything, but I feel like he could possibly be the starter for this team by the end of the season if he plays well today. And
yeah.
He's 4,600.
Yeah. Okay. Certainly interesting. That's definitely interesting. But I'm just saying maybe they shortened the playbook a little bit for him at his first start. Kind of an emergency
I really
start.
liked Cooper prior to this situation because Njoku has this like Burns issue, which is like super weird. By the way, I don't understand how that happened.
He was probably making like spaghetti or something. I don't know. Oh, no, it was a fire pit. That's what it was.
It was a fire pit. Yeah,
it was a fire pit.
So I don't know if this helps Cooper or hurts Cooper. Like I can't really gauge it.
I feel like it's not a good thing.
He's not a bad passer though, Dean. Like I don't know. It's tough to say because it's just preseason stuff, but he was definitely the best rookie quarterback that I've seen in the preseason.
I thought O'Connell was the greatest preseason quarterback of all time. Is that not true? I was told he was spectacular.
Yeah,
I don't play preseason DFS, so
I don't either. It could have been a chopped up highlight tape, but this kid looked all right.
I will just say this: spending up a quarterback right now feels really contrarian. Just as like a general thought, like Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, are they going to be like less than 10%, less than 5% owned, or around there?
So
certainly interesting.
I would think so.
When I was running some stuff last night, they were hitting some builds, and I thought it was very interesting what they were hitting. So I wouldn't get away from Allen or Hurts. Hurts is the one that people are just not going to play Hurts. Like, I know it's a divisional game, but couple tush push there, AJ Brown or Devontae Smith deep, and this game could get out of hand quick, in my opinion.
The tush push thing is so silly, but it's like a free touchdown every single time, and it kills Swift. I love Swift, but he's got to run it in from the 7 or the 20. I prefer
they'll run it from the
Allen.
4-yard line. they'll run the tush push from the 4-yard line.
Do you like a run back on Washington? I think Logan Thomas is kind of, just because again it's tight end and he's back and it's cheap, and I don't really love anything else. The running back situation is kind of a mess. If you're playing Hurts, who's your favorite Washington run back,
Bobby? Probably Thomas, McLaurin, Dotson. They're in play. The Eagles defense I like a good bit. They had a ton of pressure, and Howell is really struggling with pressure. You're just paying a premium for the Eagles defense.
So many sacks last week versus Buffalo.
Yeah, I don't think you need to run it. You want it to stay close, though. That's the thing. I don't know. I might just play the Eagle. If you're just gonna play it, just play Logan Thomas and the Eagle stack. Yeah.
Alex says 75 minutes into the show, Washington runbacks are about where the show is over. Yeah, well, I mean, look, I'm just sort of thinking about, I like Hurts, and I don't know how to play somebody in the Washington side. You certainly can. Hey, let's hit a few of the chalky stuff, like what we're seeing ownership wise. We're gonna get a new batch of ownership with the new news coming in, but what we have right now, Tim, most popular running back right now, which is pretty interesting, that Kyron Williams has got 9 percentage points, and everybody else he's getting 25%. Just tell me if you have a stance. Either one of you guys, jump in. Good chalk, bad chalk, right? Kyron Williams, 25%.
I vote yes.
That's good chalk.
Yeah, I'm voting yes.
I'd be a little bit above the field building. Yeah.
Jacob 16%. Moss 16%.
Moss, I vote a hard no.
I'm off Moss too. Jacobs, I'm with Tim. I think he's a good shot.
Jacobs, yes. Williams, yes. Moss, no. Javonte Williams, I think that's I would not want to be over 15% on him.
It's a tough one.
We didn't.
No, he's bad. He's bad chalk. He has to be bad chalk.
Why?
I would think
he's not getting enough touches.
Yeah,
he's losing market there.
I don't think he's going to be losing it going. You're projecting that P. Ryan's going to take more and more. I don't think it's supposed to go that way, right? Theoretically, they're supposed to be slowly working him in, and it's kind of supposed to increase, but it hasn't. But isn't kind of part of it they lost by 70 last week or 50 last week? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that could have something to do with it. For me, it's the projection play that you're not supposed to play. I think Jesse tweeted about this last night, and then if he just goes nuclear, he goes nuclear. But yeah, I don't know.
Things always work out for Jesse according to his tweet, so sure, he's going to be on the right side of this. CMC at 15%, by the way, is, I think you're supposed to be over that. You talked about that earlier, Bobby. Yeah.
CMC, you're just getting. Yeah. Pollard, I feel like you're in a situation where the game is pace up, and I think with everything that we know about the roster construction and the slate, he's going to come in lower owned than where sites are probably projecting him. So I think he's a fair play.
Bobby, give me your favorite New England run back.
Well, I think we just got some. Zeke is like seeing a starting role, I guess. I don't
What
even
is
know
that? What's a
what is
starting
that?
role?
Like, I don't.
Zeke is supposed to get more touches. Like, what does that even mean? Like,
I have
Is that
no
a
idea what it
note?
means. So, like the guy for New
Revenge?
England, I think it would be like Bourne for me. He'd probably be my favorite. But we had this situation, I think it was the Miami Island game, where Demario Douglas was getting a lot of snaps, and then his snaps just completely disappeared. I think his snaps go up, and he's 3K. So if I was playing large field stuff, I just throw him in my pool, and if he hits, he hits. But I don't think you really need to do that. I don't think you need to run the. Actually, the pace is up in this game, so maybe you could run it back. I don't understand the Zeke situation. I don't know, why are they giving Zeke like starting role? Imagine if you were a best ball guy clamoring for Ramondre Stevenson, and you see that news, you're ready to bridge jump. You know, like
is that you? Is that you, Bobby?
no. I would never.
Okay, I was just making sure.
The O line for New England is terrible. So
First and goal at the 1, right? First and goal at the 1. It's Zeke gets first crack, right? I mean, he's probably kind of sort of like they're going to give it to Zeke. Like they're going to let him. Like I don't know if Belichick cares about such things as far as the revenge touchdown. However you want to say
he
it.
does. No, Belichick does. He's very spiteful. Zeke will likely get his touchdown, and
He's getting his carry. Like if we're in that
he's
scenario,
getting his
he's
goal
gonna
line
get the
touch.
chance. But somebody mentioned Mostert, and it is really wild how DFS works. Yeah, like Mostert scored 4 touchdowns last week. People are like, yeah, whatever. Achane scored 4 touchdowns last week. Whatever. 1%, 1% Achane, and 6% Mostert. I mean,
This is the week where you have to be like a 2014 DFS player and just play just chase the previous week. Yeah.
Whatever happened last week is supposed
Whatever
to happen
happened last week. This is the week you gotta do it. I have this conversation with one friend every week, and he's like still stuck in that mindset of like 2014 where oh, this guy went out like the blender tweet earlier this week, which was great, by the way. But I was just like, you have to play these guys, obviously, because they went off last week. And every week I tell him the same thing, and he just hasn't figured it out that like it's been like 5 years of this at this point, you know?
I don't know why I keep losing.
Yeah.
The reverse would be like to play the same lineup, like put whatever screwed up, whatever was bad the week before. I don't know. I feel like that'd be a better philosophy, a better route, whatever was poor the week before. But all right. Hey, Tim, Keenan Allen's getting 25% ownership on DK, number 1 wide receiver. I think you think that's good chalk because earlier in the show, unless you have changed things, he's in every single lineup you have made so far.
He's in 3 of 3, and I think if I was making 20, he'd be in 20 out of 20. Really. I don't want to jinx it, but I think he's just a smash. So I'm playing him 100%.
I think Josh Palmer is bad chalk at the second most popular receiver, 19%. And I'm whispering it because this can go horribly wrong. But
I think that's a good, decent take though.
I like Palmer.
I do too.
You're leaning in.
He's good. Yeah, he's good. I like Palmer. I
don't think he's that great. 4K. It's just an opportunity thing. Like, and that's you weigh talent versus opportunity. But he's been on the field for most plays anyway this year. And
like, yeah, but he's playing a different role, right? Like he'd probably move. He might actually. It could be Quentin Johnson that slides in that role. I just feel like they would trust Palmer more because he's been in the system to know all the routes.
Quentin Johnson at 2% is just like fantastic GPP play. I mean, he's projected for 9 points, which is pretty solid at 3.7.
The plan is it has to be eventually Johnston takes over Palmer, or is like they're like side by side as far as like opportunities.
Right.
It's just guessing when is that going to happen.
If you get ahead of that though, you're going to make a ton.
Yeah, and it might be this week. It's probably not, but also like those that know ball would say that he's more talented than Palmer. I don't pretend to be that guy, to be clear. I don't pretend to be the guy. I've not broken down the all 22 and like Johnson's mixtape, but I know, he's a highly sought after, prospect. Dell at 16%, Puka Nacua at 15, Pickens at 15. That's kind of interesting, but I like the price and the, in the dome there versus Houston. Adams at 15. I don't really agree with that, but I understand because people are going to be playing his quarterback, but I would take Chase over Adams, and
I would too.
He's
Definitely.
cheaper and getting less ownership. I know the game is slower and whatever. We didn't really Diggs and Tyreek in the premier game, 13%, 10%. What do you got on that, Bobby, as far as that cluster? Looks like Adams will be the most popular because ownership's going to shuffle to O'Connell. Although now it might be shuffling to the guy for Cleveland. We'll see. Stay tuned. But yeah, thoughts here, Bobby.
I think you guys swayed me to Chase over Adams. Just because I agree with Tim's take. Like, this could be the Jacobs week. And I feel like that would take away from like the passing game. And Adams is going to need a very significant ceiling with all the strong wide receivers on the slate. And especially in that range. Like, I think Chase is a great play. I think Waddle's in that range. I really like him. He's going overlooked. Puka's down at 6'7". I think Puka's a smash. Puka's like my play. Like Tim likes Keenan. I like Puka. I'm going to have a ton of Puka today.
His last week to thrive, right? Because like next week it looks like Cup's probably coming back and he's going to step back a little bit. And I think we kind of got like a floor game his floor game last week, and it wasn't terrible. It wasn't ideal, but I think there's so much more there on the table. I like that. I think he's still too cheap, basically.
Yeah,
kind of what you're saying
for that role. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's pretty much my thought process too.
I would just throw out there, by the way, if you're not playing Chase, I think Higgins for a bounce back game is really interesting. He left some yards on the table last game. Hey, by the way, I did want to mention this. The Pick 6 show, we're running a listener league contest, and egregiously, for some reason, it's not filled just yet. There's a few spots remaining. Just $5 to jump in there. Standard contest. If you finish first, you have to finish first, you get yourself not a week, not 2 weeks, not 3 weeks, a month free of RotoGrinders Premium, and not just football, but all the sports: football, baseball, basketball, soccer, hockey, everything that's going. NBA will be in full swing a month from now. Even college football, everything except the NASCAR. But go ahead and jump in that league. There's a few spots still remaining. I'll drop it in the chat. Do hit that like button. Do subscribe. Do turn on those notifications. Do all those things. I did want to mention, Bobby, you're talking about spending up at tight end. Let's see. First of all, insane that Freiermuth is 23% owned, and the next guy is 8%. Terrible chalk. Freiermuth. I like Freiermuth fine, Bobby, but he should not be 3 times more owned than everybody else.
I feel like all the tight ends that are hitting projections. We didn't talk about 2 tight ends that I think are relatively interesting. If you're playing Burrow, Hudson and Wilcox at 2.5, like their pivots off these 3K trash cans that everyone's seeing. Smythe, someone mentioned him in chat. Like, I think he lost snaps last week, but I think he's someone that could be a little squeaky wheel situation there. Because he's running so many snaps, and then you have, I think there's Rivercraft is out, and I don't even know what the other guy's name is, but there's going to be opportunity there, and he's just on the field. Yeah, I think spending up a tight end though, like you said, Dean. Like I love Kittle still with Debo in. Yeah.
Andrews at 7%. The matchup's not great against Cleveland, but also they're going to be without Beckham. They're going to be without. The other speedster, I'm losing his name, starts with an R, but it's not in my head for some reason. For sure, Andrews, I think Zay Flowers is a guy that's going to catch 6, 7, 8 passes or something like that, kind of an extension of the running game, and they are thin at receiver as well. Hawkins,
were you talking about Bateman, Dean?
Yes.
He's out, right?
Yeah, they're without 2 receivers.
Yeah.
Again, the matchup's not premier there, but I think spending up on Andrews. Really, Hawkinson's just going to get no ownership. And I know you put Freiermuth in your cash game build, Tim, but I'm not saying
I'm not married to that. I said you could go down to Hudson. I think you could go down to Hooper, Bryant. There's a lot of like really, really, really cheap guys you could play if you just wanted to full out punt it.
You mentioned Bryant. You need a Njoku out, right?
Right. Yeah.
He's still questionable. Go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah. Is Thielen getting lost in translation? Because I feel like at the beginning of the week, he was hitting everything. I just had a buddy text me. He's like, is no one playing Thielen?
So he fell back in projections once Dalton was not the quarterback. And Bryce Young is a significant downgrade, which is a weird sentence to say, is that you really want your receiver to have Andy Dalton in the year 2023. But that's kind of what happened there. It's also a revenge game, and he's talked about it too. Speaking of that, you get the revenge game stack. You get yourself some Zeke and some Adam Thielen in 2023 and see how that works out for you. But I think he's fine.
we watched that Saints Carolina game. Like that was an island game. Bryce Young looked at Thielen a bunch, right? Like he's seen a ton of targets in that game. Yeah, I don't mind. Maybe that's something to do with Lattimore on Mingo, but I still think Mingo was weak. His second game in the NFL at that point. Like for me, like I think Thielen's a good play. I'd be getting over that in large field stuff.
Yeah, Brian says, who we locking in a tight end? We're locking in nobody. At least I'm not locking anybody in. I'm flexible as far as tight end. I don't think there's anybody I feel incredible about.
So,
yeah.
So the Hurts play, if you're playing Hurts, like Goddard at 4.4, no one's playing Goddard at all. Like he's another one of those tight ends that I would be willing to pay up for to differentiate the construction instead of paying like one of these 3Kers.
Diana Rossini's reporting that Njoku's actually going to play despite the burn incident. Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. He's in.
Interesting. He's a gamer. Hopefully he's all right. And that crosses Bryant off the list, right? I assume you mentioned Bryant. Just want to make sure people understand that. We have
but you could still do Hudson. You can still do Hudson at 2,500.
Yeah. It's also gross, but the opportunity cost is not that high. Tight end the position is terrible as is. You're without Kelsey playing on the night slate. Squirrel Patrol knocking on the door. Erik Beimfohr knocking on the door. They're coming in shortly. They should be in momentarily. Give me a hot final scalding take, a correct take, Tim. Give me something to help the people out. Something that's hot take worthy that you would actually, you respond to my tweet and it would get yourself a week free of RG Premium if you're correct. What do you see? What are you seeing this week? Give me something good.
I'm going to go with Tanner Hudson scores double-digit fantasy points. That's pretty hot.
Is he in your cash lineup right now? Have you been tinkering? Have you figured it out?
Yeah, he might be. And he's going to be under 1% owned. So that's pretty hot, Dean.
Is it still Richardson in your cash game, or you're still kind of bouncing back and forth?
I think I'm playing Richardson.
Yeah. You can always chop your cash game in half. You can make two different, like a 2v2 or a 3v3.
No, Dean. No.
Is that too much of a beta move for you? You don't like it?
I will never do that, ever.
All right. Bobby, by the way, update there for Atlanta and the Jags. It's 17-0 at the half. Pitts does have a catch, so shout out to him. 1 catch for 8 yards. But Ritter still 9 for 14, and it's pretty horrific. Couple picks as well. Bobby, see Tim's hot take and raise him. And I think, presumably, by the time you knock that out, the next group will be knocking on the door.
Is Christian McCaffrey 2 touchdowns and 100 yards a good take? Or that doesn't count?
I mean, that's a good take, but like, it's
not bold enough. I get what you're saying.
Much more scalding than that take. I'll say that. That was not the most scalding of takes.
I don't know.
Puka
Nacua, 10 catches.
Okay. What do you think, Eric? Is that a hot enough take? Puka Nacua. Squirrel says no. Squirrel shaking his head no.
No. Yeah.
Say 11. Say 12.
What was the take?
Bobby.
Puka Nacua 10 catches.
He's getting like 18 targets.
Yeah.
It is.
It's a nice way of saying no.
It is crazy that a rookie in his 4th game catching 10 balls is not a hot take. That's pretty wild where we're at.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, Eric, how's Sirius working out for y'all? Are you on there every single week? I see 6 to 9. Is that what's going on when you're on Sirius, the RotoGrinders show?
Yeah, 6 to 9. I think it's me and Beer again today, but yeah, pretty much every Sunday, myself, Beer, and Cards. A small little rotation, but it's actually a lot of fun. It's a little bit of a marathon, but like just hanging out, sweating the games with the folks, doing tons of live look-ins and breaking down fantasy, breaking down the Sunday Night Football. So yeah, if you have a Sirius subscription, it's a lot of fun. We'll be there for 3 hours tonight.
You're tilting whatever happened in the 4 to 4 o'clock games.
Yep.
You're keeping an eye on the second half of the slate, and then I guess you're looking forward to showdown stuff. You're chasing, and if things aren't going very well,
chasing losses.
You're breaking down. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, just wanted to make people aware that if you're happy to be driving around, and if you want somebody to things don't go so well, give it a listen to the RotoGrinders show. 6 to 9. Is it channel 87? I think it's 87.
Yep.
There you go. All right, Bobby, Tim, anything else before we step aside and get out of here?
Say good luck, guys, this week.
Yeah, good luck.
All righty. Win some money. It's Squirrel Patrol. It's Erik Beimfohr. Take it over, Erik.
Thank you, Dean. Hopefully those guys got all the good takes out of the way here, and we'll bring you some fire tournament takes here. GPP Final Takes, as you see at the top of your screen here on RotoGrinders.com. I am, as always, your host, Erik Beimfohr, joined by pretty much, as always, my co-host, John Breslin, a.k.a. Squirrel Patrol, a.k.a. one of the best DFS tournament players in all of the land. And John, we're not going to pull any punches today. This one is a doozy. We got a doozy of a slate here that has completely changed even over the course of the last 12 hours or, maybe less.
Last
hour and a half. I want to start with the kind of slate dynamics that have shifted here over the last, like I said, 12 hours and last hour. Like you mentioned, if you're not familiar with the show, if this is your first time watching, we won't necessarily go game by game. We won't necessarily go position by position, but it being the Final Takes for Tournaments show of the week, we're trying to bounce around and hit all of the most notable tournament items that we need to discuss, right? Sometimes that's a specific game. Sometimes that's a specific player, position, stack, whatever. And I do think we have to start today with the most recent news, both overnight, late last night, and this morning, that we are essentially getting, particularly on DraftKings, to essentially min-priced quarterbacks in at least what I would call average to good matchups and game environments, depending upon what you think about the Baltimore defense. But Aidan O'Connell is going to start for the Raiders, which is interesting because he hasn't even been active on game days. Brian Hoyer has been the active backup, and then Jimmy goes down and they don't even trust Hoyer to come in and play. But Aidan O'Connell will start for the Raiders, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, rookie out of UCLA, O'Connell, rookie out of Purdue, both starting. Deshaun Watson is inactive today. So normally, quarterback doesn't necessarily make the most important aspect of the slate, right? But today, with two like 4K-ish guys, particularly on DraftKings, I think it changes a lot. How are you kind of processing that news with those two quarterbacks in particular now being available to us?
Yeah, so I think you hit on it, that it's a big difference between DraftKings and FanDuel. I would probably not consider the quarterbacks on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I want to see what projections update to, what ownership projections update to. My contrarian take is that both these guys might be awful. And people, the starting quarterback goes down. Like the most popular man in every city is the backup quarterback for the football team. Because everybody's expecting some kind of Tom Brady situation. And it's like, oh my God, this guy's only at 4,000 on DraftKings. Like maybe you should just up the opposing defenses and just run everything as you normally would. But maybe consider, maybe you were going to use the Eagles defense and now you're saving some money using the Ravens or the Chargers defense. It makes me a little bit more interested in Joshua Kelly for the Chargers. Because I think people are going to wake up. They're going to see these guys are 4,000 on DraftKings. They're going to be like, oh man, look, I now can afford like Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill. And I just have to play like Aidan O'Connell. I didn't know who these guys were yesterday. So I'm not going to play. I'm sure in my 150 build set, I will play some Aidan O'Connell and Thompson Robinson. Yeah.
DTR. Yeah. Here's the best part about both of these two players. They have long names, but they both have abbreviations. DTR is Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and AOC. Nope, don't mean that as not a pun or we're not trying to change the subject of the show, but AOC Aidan O'Connell for future reference. I think so far through the first month of the season, this quarterback thing is probably the most fascinating and maybe most difficult kind of tournament tactic to wrap your head around, because if I take a step back and I'll put my my football helmet on, I'll get my hand in the dirt a little bit. Let's start with the Raiders. The Raiders have a couple different things really going for them today. The Chargers defense stinks. The Chargers defense has been one of the worst in the NFL. The Chargers play fast. The Chargers are going to throw. The Chargers are probably going to score because Vegas doesn't have a good defense. So the game environment, the matchup and everything is really nice. On top of that, you have essentially two players who aside from Josh Jacobs, two receivers who touch the ball. That is it on the entire Raiders offense. So if you're going to stack one of these two guys, AOC makes a ton of sense because it's Devontae Adams or Jacoby Myers, and those two guys are really good, and they're the only guys that are going to get the football. The flip side is, like you mentioned, this is not some superstar quarterback. I do think he was a preseason darling. If you played college football DFS or anything like that, you probably played him a lot in the college football DFS streets. Shout out to him and Charlie Jones, backup wide receiver for the Bengals, were always a fun stack. But I think in terms of a backup quarterback getting thrust into the starting job, these are the two guys who make it the most. Like, if this was Brian Hoyer, we wouldn't even be talking about this. Like, if this was, one of those guys, we wouldn't be talking about this. But I think DTR can run. O'Connell, not so much of a runner, but he's actually a pretty good passer. I think that the situation for him is really, really good. And so I am not necessarily writing them off, but I want to get a gauge of ownership. And right, because if both of these guys end up like being the chalk quarterbacks, well, I can still play a cheap guy, let's say a Bryce Young in a really good matchup. You can play, the corpse of Sam Howell on the Commanders in a bad matchup. You can play some other cheap guys. You can play Russell Wilson in a great matchup against the Bears. And so I just want to see, is everybody going to gravitate to them? Well, then, okay, now a Russ stack or something looks really appealing. But if people are just going to stick to their guys and be like, I can't play these rookies, even though they're 4K, then that makes me like them a lot more.
Yeah, so Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I guess, is DTR, is 4,600. So he's 500 cheaper than Kenny Pickett. Like, Kenny Pickett's a professional quarterback. And I'm not sure DTR didn't just come out of the stands, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm obviously being glib, but I do think these guys will get ownership. I mean, it's a little bit like an NBA slate, and the late scratch replacement, if you have like 10 minutes, always gets a ton of ownership. Always gets like 6% ownership.
It's a top of mind.
I thought I was the only one that knew about him. Like, no, everybody knows about this. Like, the line, I think, just flipped from Cleveland being favored by 2 to Baltimore being favored by 2 in a game like a 38 total. The quarterback's 4,600. Like, he's only 400 cheaper than like Ryan Tannehill. And I guess one thing I tend to think about in these situations is like the top guys or quarterbacks that were drafted were like CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young. Like, their teams were preparing maybe even for years about like having a quarterback this year, and they're not rushing those guys in. Like, they're like kind of limiting the playbook a little bit because they, it can be such a difficult position to learn your first year in the NFL. Like, these guys were not drafted as highly as those guys, and like, it's great they look good in college and look good in the preseason. In preseason they're maybe playing against other guys they were just playing against in college. So yeah, I think I'm going to go underweight these guys. I'm not going to be playing them like cash into like single entry. Almost certainly probably have some single digit percent in my 150 builds. But even then, I do think people forget to just boost up the opposing defense. Like, if projections don't update, like, you should be manually updating the Chargers defense to be a little bit higher, maybe the Ravens defense to be a little bit higher, and maybe even the running backs. I don't love Baltimore running backs, but like Joshua Kelly suddenly is a little bit more interesting to me than he would have been otherwise.
Yep. I do just want to say, for anybody maybe simulcasting, the Atlanta Falcons have remembered how to play football on offense just now. A touchdown to Drake London from Desmond Ridder. So we can put the pitchfork back in the garage for a second. The Drake London and Kyle Pitts never get the ball narrative can go away for just a second.
London TD in London was the easiest bet on the
easiest free money. I don't know if you watched any or pulled up any of the Toy Story stream that they have on ESPN Plus. Oh, buddy. I don't know who approved them going forward with that, but oh my gosh. So bad. So bad. Worse than Desmond Ridder's first half. It made watching Desmond Ridder's first half more tolerable because you have no idea what's going on in the Toy Stories. It's just like little robots moving around. They're saying the ball gets completed. It doesn't get completed by the robots. I don't know. It was awful. Shout out to ESPN for another terrible product out there. Let's pivot a little bit to you mentioned Joshua Kelly. We have a bunch of, like, it feels like an NBA slate to your point. Austin Eckler not going to play today, or doubtful, I should say, meaning he's almost assuredly not going to play this afternoon. Seems to be getting healthier, but they have a bye next week. The Chargers do, and frankly, they're playing AOC and the Raiders, so they're probably thinking they can get a win here without Austin Eckler. But that opens up Josh Kelly for the third week in a row, whatever it is, where he's theoretically the guy in the Chargers backfield. But there's quite a few different running backs actually also in a similar price range that I really, really like. Some also benefiting from injuries and such, and some just have really become strong plays, but maybe their price hasn't adjusted. How are you racking and stacking, say, a Josh Kelly versus the Kyren Williams and Zach Moss and DeAndre Swift and Javonte Williams and Alexander Madison, all these guys who project really well and are really, really tightly priced there? How are you kind of prioritizing that group?
So I actually, like I said, like Josh McKelly is growing on me with the situation with the opposing quarterback. I think he pairs well with a Chargers defense. Like, it's not necessarily going to project that well unless you're pulling your projections now or are closer to lock. Yeah. We have a bunch of good a bunch of good running backs. I guess one thing I look at for running backs is I look at touchdown props, and the two most likely guys to score a touchdown in today's game across all positions, Christian McCaffrey by far ahead of everybody else. And I think if you have the money to spend, like, Christian McCaffrey is an outstanding player to pick for your roster. Second is Joshua Kelly. And I think some of that is probably due to the situation where, like, they might not have to rely on the passing game now. They can maybe just run the ball. I mean, we'll see. I'm obviously kind of down on these, like, rookie quarterbacks just because I think that's actually going to be the contrarian take. I think people say, oh, well, maybe this guy's going to be outstanding. Well, maybe he's not. And maybe the Chargers can just run the ball. And Joshua Kelly, like, had a pretty good, first game, and then now he's disappointed. And so I think people are going to be off of him, but his situation has just gotten better and better. So I like him. I like Zach Moss. I wouldn't pair Zach Moss with Anthony Richardson, but I think you can play either one of them, and they're both in pretty good spots. So just pick the one you want to pick. Maybe if you're playing Moss, you're playing Matthew Stafford as the opposing quarterback rather than Richardson. And then kind of flip-flop that, where if you want to play Anthony Richardson, maybe Kyren Williams is a very good running back selection.
Are you going to play any of, because I've gotten this question already this week, Kyren Williams and Zach Moss, both, what a world. 2023, we have a Toy Story football game going on in London in the mornings, and in the afternoons, we have Kyren Williams and Zach Moss projecting as two of the biggest workhorses in the entire NFL. Zach Moss played, I believe, 98% of the snaps last week, only came out because he got tired because he had like 35 touches in a win over the Ravens, and Kyren Williams played 100% of the snaps. These two guys are total workhorses, maybe not the world's most talented players or most explosive players, but both $6,000 on DraftKings, and both, I think the price is fine for them on FanDuel as well. But can you play them together, or do you want to do Zach Moss with Puka or Stafford or Tutu or whatever, and then Richardson with Kyren Williams?
I think you can play them together. I like Kyren Williams a little bit better. If you end up with 6,000 left and you've got Kyren Williams, I think Zach Moss is fine. There's like some positive correlation, some negative correlation potentially. Yeah. They both do catch like some passes. I mean, obviously, like if they're playing 95% of the running back snaps, like they're going to catch it. Yeah, they kind of have to. So that's what really like makes me not want to play running backs from the opposing teams, right? Is if neither one of them catches passes, if they're both just grinding, 3-yard run, 3-yard run, 3-yard run for like 30 carries or something on both sides. Like, that's not a game I'm interested in, and that's not like I don't want to have those guys opposing each other. But like this is a situation where they're both going to catch passes, so like they're potentially gonna like lift each other, right? Like if one of them gets like a 30-yard touchdown, he's handing the ball back to the opposing team, then maybe the other guy gets a 30-yard touchdown.
Yep. When you get all of the high value touches, right? And now Anthony Richardson coming back, theoretically, you could say that hurts Zach Moss's goal line, probability. But if it boosts his efficiency and his chances to get to the goal line, it's like that kind of offsets it. in that sense. Yeah, I mean, I like everybody in that game probably. We'll get to a little bit more of that game from a stacking perspective here shortly. I do want to hit a couple questions that we have in the chat. If you are watching, if you are in the chat, A, as has been mentioned here, give us a thumbs up. We would really appreciate it. And B, if you have any questions at all, drop them in here. We'll answer your questions a little bit more. As you see, a tournament focused show. So if you have cash questions, we will do our best to answer them, but a little bit more tournament focused. If you have any of those questions, pile them on in. Johnny Rotten asked about Jerome Ford, another guy who, kind of slipped my mind there, which tells you a lot probably about his ownership, maybe with the fact that I didn't even mention him amongst that group of 5 to 6K running backs on DraftKings. But again, Nick Chubb obviously out for the season. You have two parts that I'm thinking about with Jerome Ford. John, I'm curious your opinion on him. You have everything that you mentioned where, okay, no Watson, rookie quarterback. Nick Chubb was already like much better than Jerome Ford. He did lose a little bit of work to Hunt, Strong, whatever. And now, like, yes, maybe he gets the ball a little bit more, but like, is the offense going to be as good with the rookie quarterback? And the matchup was already not good, right, against the Ravens run defense. But the counter is, okay, DTR's in there. They're not going to YOLO. It's not going to be YOLO ball DTR like they do with Watson sometimes. It might be like, okay, Ford, we're time to load you up and you got to take us to the promised land. And despite the matchup, if he's getting all that work at that price, he does look pretty appealing. How do you rank like Jerome Ford also amongst that group of those 5 and 6K running backs?
Yeah, he's just a little bit of a notch behind for me, just because like the concerns with the offense. I don't know if the Browns quarterback is a runner or not, but that's something
he can run. He can run.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like they tend not to they tend to take the ball down and run themselves rather than dump it off to the running backs. So that hurts the receptions. And it's just like I'd have Joshua Kelly ranked ahead of him. I'd have Devontae Williams ranked ahead of him. And then then he's kind of right there with like DeAndre Swift, like Najee Harris, Dameon Pierce. Like people have totally forgotten about Dameon Pierce. Like Dameon Pierce, against Pittsburgh versus Jerome Ford against Baltimore. And like the line in that game, I guess kind of all we have to go off of right now. The line's just plummeted, in favor of Baltimore. So that doesn't give me a lot of hope that the Cleveland offense is going to be running the ball up and down the field.
Yep, I totally agree. Question from Brian. Alexander Madison or James Conner? A couple more running backs. I did slightly mention Alexander Madison, and we got some more running backs in the comments. I think this conversation and the comments and the questions are telling you a lot about there's a depth of running back. And so I'm not saying don't play Kyren Williams. I'm not saying don't play the chalky guys or whatever. But if you have conviction about Alexander Madison, right, Cam Akers doesn't matter. The matchup is very good for Alexander Madison. If you have conviction, I feel like you should trust yourself on these because they're like, in most weeks, a lot of these guys would be really popular, and they're not like most of them are not going to be popular at all today because of just the depth of running back plays. What do you think about these two guys?
So my preferred running back there would be Madison. The concern is that Cam Akers might be getting more work than you expect, but I don't necessarily know that's the case. I mean, Cam Akers kind of came free to the Vikings, and he had really worn out his welcome with the Rams. So I'm not as concerned about Akers as some other people might be. Actually, just for like the record, I like Miles Sanders probably better than Alexander Madison in that same game. And I think the same price.
Price. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I like Miles Sanders, and he's, he was just confirmed in this morning. So like that might affect his ownership a little bit. But yeah, my order would be Miles Sanders, then Madison, and then Connor going against San Francisco's tough. That's tough.
I like it. I'm just going to go ahead and get this one out of the way. No, thank you. Sorry, Jeffrey. No,
I'm playing some Najee Harris on FanDuel. I'll say
you guys are psychopaths. On FanDuel, it is a little bit different. I will mention that. But this will be the burial. Like last week, I was like, how bad could it be for the Falcons? Well, pretty bad, apparently. The Falcons' take last week was about as bad as it can get. So shout out to me I will wave that white flag around.
We were both on them, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was so bad. I can't believe how bad they played. And then, of course, they come out and Ritter throws a couple more picks this morning out in London. Just terrible. Thank God the Falcons are not on this slate. I don't want to talk about London and Pitts and Bijan and all. Ritter would have been 4,500 or something like that. We'd have been talking about him. So I'm glad that that's not happening. But I will just say, I think you could maybe talk me into being heavier on Najee on just a different slate. There are so many plays on this slate. Like at running back, even at wide receiver, it's a really deep slate. If you're making teams that project poorly relative to, right, if you just run the optimal 150 or whatever, get your top 150 lineups. If you're building a bunch of teams that project poorly compared to those, I think you need to rethink how galaxy brains you're getting, because there are so many plays that you can play that are really, really good projected plays. Like we said, that guys that would have been chalk on other slates that are going to be 3% because there's just so much to go around, and we have some cheap guys, whatever. Another guy who's back today, who I was more interested in earlier in the week. And then this morning, news comes out, another quarterback, Derek Carr, is going to play today, which is kind of bizarre. But I think that that's a big boost to Alvin Kamara, Derek Carr being in there over Jameis Winston. I don't think I can play him in cash per Jose's question, but what do you think about Alvin Kamara for tournaments?
I'm playing him in some FanDuel cash, to be honest.
I don't know what it's. I should have been more prepared with the FanDuel pricing. So,
no, but I am. I think that's a bold call on my part, though, and that's, to be clear, when I say cash, I'm actually playing a lot of like triple ups and quintuple ups.
I like him in that. Yeah.
Because I think he's right up there, and I agree. I think Carr being in, like, Carr is more likely to kind of dump the ball off to Alvin Kamara, whereas Winston's going to throw it like 80 yards. Chris Olave. But we should not forget, like, Jamal Williams is out too. So I actually think he's got one of the broadest range of outcomes on the slate, because we don't know how the Saints are going to look at Kamara. Are they going to look at him and say, well, he's fresh legs? We've got, like, his backup is out, Jamal Williams. And, we need to move the ball on offense. So we're going to rely on Alvin Kamara. Or are they going to say, well, he's missed the first 3 weeks, so we want to ease him back in? But I would say we tend to always just think of guys in terms of in or out. Like, Alvin Kamara was suspended, so there was no injury situation, so he's able to work out. He's hopefully ready to go and might be relied on. And that makes me think that the Saints may look and say, well, he's fresh legs, whereas other guys are beat up. Like Jamal Williams is already out with a hamstring injury. We've got Miller and Tony.
Kendray's been hurt. I know he played last week, but he's been banged up. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe they're looking at Alvin Kamara and, oh wow, just in time. And and the quarterback's a little bit beat up now too. And it's a quarterback that is maybe likely to think about how many receptions Josh Jacobs would get in Vegas with Derek Carr. Mm-hmm. So now you've got Alvin Kamara, who's maybe even a better receiver. But he wasn't that great last season, so that's a concern. But I think Alvin Kamara is definitely in play, and I'm playing him in tournaments, aiming to be over the field on him in tournaments, playing him in a little bit of the FanDuel cash type games.
I like the I know not a lot of people are running triple ups and quintuple ups and those kinds of things, but I think there's a lot of fun strategy around those contests that we unfortunately probably don't have time to necessarily get to, but I like those little pivots like that. Like you said, you don't have to get so far off of kind of the chalk and the optimal, but you can do just a little bit, right? And a Kamara, like a 2v2 of Kamara and whoever, Kamara Chase over Keenan and somebody, right? I'm just making things up off the top of my head, but little things like that in those contests are pretty fun. So many running backs that we still have even more questions. We got to go right from Najee Harris and Alvin Kamara to Zeke. We're getting all the old, well, I guess Najee's not old. We're getting all the dusty, slow bruising backs. But for anybody that missed it this morning / overnight, again, we get reports that Zeke is going to start, which I don't think means anything really in football, but he's going to get, a more of a lion's share of the work in New England, which makes absolutely no sense to me, but who am I to say? Bill Belichick knows better than I guess. Does that make you appeal? Does that make Zeke appealing at all in a somewhat tough matchup with Dallas? Although James Conner just cooked them. I struggle with how to assess this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good defense. I'm a little bit concerned. It's an honorary thing, right? They still might rely on Ramondre more. It makes sense for them to give Zeke the start. He's a veteran, so he's going back into Dallas. Everybody can applaud as he runs onto the field. I'm not convinced he's going to actually get more work. And even if he does, it has to be against the Dallas defense, which is also not something I'm interested in attacking. And now, there's plenty of running backs that are cheap that we can go to. And it's still going to take a running back spot. I mean, I think if you're playing a million maker, and maybe there's a situation that comes up in the game where they're going to put him in at the goal line, right? And we want to let's get Zeke the touchdown, against Dallas. But I'm not really interested in attacking it.
Just too many options. I don't even think like if he has a fine game, I wouldn't. But like, there's a difference between is this guy going to have a fine game or is this guy going to win you tournaments, right? And like with all the opportunity cost at running back is massive, to like absolutely massive. It's massive at every position, but at running back the depth is really, really strong. Continuing on that, Jared asked, what do we think about the Dolphins backs and their ownership? They're not projecting to be very popular. Maybe the game of the week, Bills Dolphins. I mean, that's probably the headliner for everybody from a real life perspective. And yet, I'll pull up all the running backs in that game. This is FanDuel now, but the ownership is not crazy on DraftKings either for someone like a Raheem Mostert. James Cook actually projecting as the highest owned running back on FanDuel. Mostert being 5% on DraftKings and 2% on FanDuel, and then you have A-Chain as well. A-Chan, I believe. I got to get it right. I don't know how to say his first name or his last name. So we're just going to stick to A-Chain. But what do you think about the Dolphins running backs? They look pretty appealing for tournaments too.
Yeah, it looks like a split backfield to me, and now they're priced up after last week. I guess they could both score 4 touchdowns again, but I'm probably I'm gonna count on that not happening. I think it's fine if you want to play. I mean, my favorite running back from that game is James Cook. If you want to like game stack that game and you can fit in Josh Allen with like Raheem Mostert or Achan Chain, then I think that's fine, and that's a fine million maker lineup. But it looks like you're paying up for a split backfield to me. And they're both very fast, so they both can like take the ball to the house, and that's a concern. But like keep in mind, they've still got Tyreek Hill. They've got Jalen Waddle back now too. So I don't think it's necessarily going to be like last week, and they have to go into Buffalo. So
I totally agree. One thing I will say, I am still considering Mostert. I don't think he's going to make the cut because of just we talked about with all these running backs. I'm not considering Achan today. I think last week was really impressive, whatever. But I don't want to say I'm throwing it out, but like portions of it I'm throwing. I mean, they scored 70 points. That game was over in like the first quarter. And so in the first 2 weeks, Achan was not even active to start the season. Now, I do think he's going to have a role. I think he's going to continue to have a role. I think he's really good at football. But I think when it came down to it in closer games in the first 2 weeks, right? I'm looking at like week 1, 73% of the snaps for Raheem Mostert. Savon Ahmed was basically in that Achan role. I think there's a reasonable chance that you go back to 70 to 75% for Mostert, and Achan's going to mix in, right? He's the one that's going to get the 27 or the 25. But I think 75% of a Dolphins backfield in a potential shootout can be worth more than 90% of another backfield. So I think Mostert is intriguing to me, but I also think, to your point, figuring out ways to like correlate it, or right, if I have a Josh Allen team, I think he can make some sense. If I have Diggs or Gabe Davis or something like that, I think it can make some sense. But running back's just tough. You're going to have to make some tough cuts at the running back position. And, speaking of that, like this is a guy that I just can't play. I understand price. I understand all of the hype around Roshan. I understand the matchup is really good, but we're talking about a guy who projects for 6 points on FanDuel. And I talk about a split backfield, at least on the Dolphins. I'm getting a split backfield on the Dolphins, split backfield on the Bears, even in a good matchup, doesn't feel very appealing to me.
Yeah. And Justin Fields is going to get the rushing yards.
Just play Fields. Play Fields.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tough situation. It's kind of like I'm probably not going to play Zach Moss on my Anthony Richardson teams because like one of them is going to get the work, and I'm guessing it's going to be Justin Fields. Like that game is interesting, but I also think it's going to be popular as well because it is like everybody's kind of seeing the same things where like both defenses could be terrible, but like maybe both offenses aren't that good either. So I'm playing some of that. Like I'm very interested in that game for like a single entry, and especially I think on FanDuel, like Justin Fields and Javonte Williams are a pretty good pairing. But I'm not going to go to the Bears running backs just because like they're probably not going to catch passes.
I totally agree. And let's pivot over to that and just quickly talk through this game. Excuse me. You mentioned FanDuel with Justin Fields. 7,200 for Justin Fields on FanDuel feels really, really nice. He's not that much more expensive on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. 6,600 over there and 7,200 on FanDuel. You see Russell Wilson also reasonably priced at 7,500. For reference, I want to sort by point per dollar, right? Like he's down here with Purdy. I mean, AOC, to our point earlier of why you can't really play those rookies, is 1,000 less basically on FanDuel compared to those guys, right? I will say the Dak performance has been funny, but you see the difference between the cheap guys, down at 6K, and then Fields and Russ both in this, what I'm going to call the bad team shootout of the week, or what people are hoping is the bad team shootout of the week. Maybe the two worst teams in the NFL playing with bad defenses on both sides. How, I know you mentioned that, I think it's going to be a little bit popular, but how are you kind of processing this one for tournaments? How are you mixing it into your portfolio?
The Bears, Denver.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. They actually, I think Dean was the one that just laid it out on the show before us. We said, yeah, Denver just gave up 70 points and they're favored on the road against Chicago. Like, what does that tell you about Chicago? Nothing. It's not a good statement on the Bears. But I will say that like Justin Fields scores well. Like we said before, right? He scores well for DFS. So he doesn't necessarily even need to put that many points on the board. Like if the Bears only score 2 touchdowns and they're both Justin Fields rushing touchdowns, that might be enough for you at 7,200, right? Assuming that he's getting some passing yards and hopefully one of those is a longer run. But especially on FanDuel, where the scores tend to be lower because you don't get the full point per reception, you're not getting a 3 point. Like you're not. There's no opportunity cost of a 300-yard passing bonus on FanDuel. So Fields is going to score a lot better on FanDuel than on DraftKings. And so, I think you compare him with Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams probably had his work a little bit limited last week, right? Because they were down by 50. So I think he's somebody that could be in a good bounce back position or could have his first really good game this week. I know he's kind of chalky, and so people are talking about he's bad chalk. I'm not so sure he's terrible chalk because there's not a lot cheaper than him. I think I said he's the 28th most expensive running back on FanDuel. I mean he's got a better chance than the 28th of landing on the winning lineup. So he doesn't have to do much to pay off that price tag.
I totally agree. Anything with the wide receivers just before we start to pivot to another game? Sutton, Judy, DJ Moore. Are you pairing DJ Moore with Fields? Or are you just hoping for the rushing, or what are you doing anything with these receivers?
So I think I'm pairing Fields with at least one pass catcher from that game, but it could be Cole Kmet, and that the opportunity cost of tight end is very small.
Yes.
Or it could be Jerry Judy. I think I've got Judy ranked a little bit ahead of Cortland Sutton. And you can even play some Russell Wilson. I'm not playing him in single entry or anything like that, but in your 150, if you're or million maker type lineup, you could do worse than Russell Wilson playing against what has looked like one of the worst defenses in the league so far.
We can say whatever we want about Russ. He's put up some fantasy points this year. It's a little bit fluky. He had the freaking Hail Mary touchdown the other week, and it obviously hasn't gone well on the field. But if we divorce ourselves from all of that and you just say, I don't know, 7,500 on FanDuel, 5,800 on DraftKings, and against the worst defense in the NFL, give or take, I think both of these quarterbacks are, if they lose ownership because of the AOC and the DTR stuff, I think makes them really, really appealing, because I came in being I like these two. They might be my favorite two tournament quarterbacks, but I'm not sneaking these guys by anybody. You know what I mean? Everybody's going to gravitate to this bad team shootout. Now, if we remove, half the ownership from these guys, because it's all going to go to DTR and AOC, now you get sub 10% Fields and 3% Russell Wilson or whatever. That looks pretty good. Some more questions in the chat. Well, this isn't a question, but shout out Eric, DJ Moore season. I do like DJ Moore with Justin Fields. Nothing more than a holding on to my bias that I thought he was going to have a good season as the total alpha in Chicago. And we'll see after today, kind of like the Falcons. If we don't do it today, that might be the end of it. We'll get to tight ends in a little bit, Steve, but I will say the Parham thing is at least a little bit interesting. He's basically splitting snaps. He's playing about 50% of the snaps. The problem is he's not getting any targets except for at the red zone. On one hand, that's great because he's getting the targets in the end zone. On the other hand, you do need more than a prayer of a 4-yard touchdown to help you for tournaments. I don't think he's crazy, but what do you think about Donald Parham in that big game that we've talked about a bunch already?
Yeah, I think you can play him. I'm not going to be going crazy with him. I think I'd only be playing him in game stacks from that game. It's like pairing him with Justin Herbert. Like if Parham's doing enough at 2,800, like that might be adding an extra touchdown to Justin Herbert. So I think you can go there. But like there's a pretty good amount of tight ends in like the 3,000 range that you can pick from, like Kylan Granson, Logan Thomas, like Kate Otten, like Hayden Hurst, Dawson Knox, like these guys are all like 3,500 or less.
Everybody played Smythe last week, and he's going to catch a touchdown today. Get ready for everybody to tilt their faces off when they play Durham Smythe, and then he actually catches one today.
And Chiga Okonkwo is only 3,100.
He's great,
and they're missing Treylon Burks.
Yep. I really like. We'll get to some of these tournament takes, but I really like the pairing of Chase with Chig, because I think Chig needs them to push, to get pushed a little bit. We need, or vice versa, right? If Chase gets pushed, we could get another, what did he have? 17 targets or something like that this past week. We know the matchup is great. But really like Chig. I'll also give a hot take right now while we're talking about the tight ends. On Parham, I actually like Gerald Everett today, and it's not because of anything that we've seen. I understand we do this thing all offseason in the best ball space. People will be like, aren't you worried about this, right? Aren't you worried about this guy stealing snaps or whatever? And like the answer to aren't you worried is always yes. Like I am. Aren't you worried that Gerald Everett hasn't played a ton of snaps? Yes. Aren't you worried Donald Parham's getting the touchdowns? Yes. I'm worried about all of that. But if we just like erase a couple of touchdowns from Donald Parham from our minds and we say, the Raiders defense sucks, Austin Eckler is out, and Mike Williams is out, and everybody's going to play Josh Palmer, and people are more interested in Donald Parham because he caught some touchdowns. Gerald Everett had 6 targets last week. Not amazing, but it's something. And that was with Mike Williams playing most of the game. Who's to say Everett doesn't get 8 or 9 targets today without Eckler and without Mike Williams? And all he needs to do is get in the end zone for 3,600 at 0 ownership on DraftKings. So I actually kind of like Everett a little bit as a bounce back. He could get 3 targets again, but welcome to tight end. You show me a tight end that's like going to have a monster day that you know about. It is what it is. Here's another good question from Johnny at a very, very similar price point. What do you think about Stephon? Assuming all else equal, I'm guessing for Johnny, he doesn't have AOC or he doesn't have Josh Allen or whatever. Who do you prefer straight up, Diggs or Adams?
Yeah, definitely Stephon Diggs. He's got Josh Allen throwing to him, whereas Devontae Adams has Aiden O'Connell throwing for him. So I'm just gonna go with Stephon Diggs.
Shout out Erik. Something about the Eriks. He probably liked the Falcons last week too. So don't give us too much credit. What if you had to pick another game? I want to talk about, we talked about Denver, Chicago. We've kind of talked about some of these other games. If you had to pick another game that was your favorite one to target for stacks, does it have to be Vikings, Panthers? You mentioned Miles Sanders before, Madison before, but we haven't touched on Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Adam Thielen, DJ Chark. We haven't touched on any of those guys, and they all look really good to me today. Is that kind of one of your favorite tournament games, or generally, what do you think about Vikings, Panthers?
Yeah, actually, I like that game a lot. I like Miles Sanders as a play. The Vikings defense has looked terrible. Yeah, I think Miles Sanders is in play. I think any number of like cheap Carolina receivers are in play. Adam Thielen revenge game narrative, if you want to go there. But like Thielen's had some decent games so far. So I like the game. I like Justin Jefferson. I think he's going to go under-owned. I don't know if he's going to hit that like 12% we've got there, because I think people are going to go to Tyreek Hill instead. But like Tyreek Hill is getting Jalen Waddle back, and Justin Jefferson's getting to face Carolina, whereas Tyreek Hill has to face Buffalo. So in particular, I like Miles Sanders and Justin Jefferson as like a little mini stack. Like I'm not going crazy with either of the quarterbacks from this game. But yeah, you can play like Miles Sanders and Justin Jefferson, and that's a decent. Yes, Miles Sanders is a little bit of savings off of like the more expensive running backs, and it allows you to fit in Justin Jefferson.
One thing I've been thinking about a lot this morning with this game is early in the week. So what I like to do, I'm not saying everyone should do this, because sometimes if you haven't played DFS for long enough, you can get anchored to your early week thoughts. I like to listen to zero content. I like to, on Tuesday or Wednesday, sometime early in the week, kind of just start to look at the slate, right? Just pull up the DraftKings app or whatever, or pull up Lineup HQ, and I'm like, start to build out like a dummy team. And because I want to see what like my brain thinks before it gets inundated with like even my own research, and it's certainly listening to other people like you, like whoever. And the very first thing I did was like, now this was why this is flawed is because I was like, Bryce Young might miss again. Give me this Andy Dalton double stack with Jefferson, Hawkinson, and Madison, whatever. And like, you can afford whatever you want, like with that type of team, right? You said you want CMC, you can play a bunch of the mid 5 and 6K running backs around it, whatever. Now, of course, Bryce Young is going to play. I'm not as excited about it, which again, what simulation are we in that we're talking about Zach Moss and Kyron Williams and praying for Andy Dalton to play over the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft? But that's where I was. And then I come around to Sunday, and like you said, it's like an NBA slate where it's like, oh, by the way, AOC is playing now, DTR is playing now, like Eckler's out, right? All these different things are happening. David Njoku apparently burned his face last night. He's playing. There's just been so much anarchy over the last 12 like you said, 12 hours that I've been like trying to make sure I think like, but remember at the beginning of the week, you really, really like this was probably your favorite like game to stack up. And so I'm not saying I'm forcing anything, but I think the ownership on this entire game has done nothing but go down, 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 down. And the strength of the plays has not gotten worse at all, right? I think all these guys make for really good plays, but just because of slate dynamics, we're getting them much lower owned now, when every week Vikings games are like the chalk because they're the new Coors Field. So I don't know yet what I'm going to do, but I think that this game has actually gotten better from a tournament perspective as the week has gone on.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's because like there's been no major changes, so like everybody might be rushing to go play AOC. But like you can go like you can play the guys from this game where it's still in the same spots. They just have less ownership now. So yeah, I actually really like this game. It's a game that's growing on me as the week has gone on. Just talking to like sharp football minds that this game could go over. Like it's kind of game where if you play it 100 times, about 50% of the time it's going to hit that 46.5 or whatever the game total is now. But it has a better chance of hitting like 55, 60 points than maybe some of the other games that are kind of priced around it. Denver and Chicago, maybe an example of that, right? Where like that's a much tougher game to go like completely berserk. But this game I think could go over the total, and then it starts to make the especially the wide receivers and running backs particularly appealing.
Definitely. We have another game I really want to make sure we hit on. There's a bunch of actually pretty appealing games, but I want to talk Rams, Colts. We obviously talked some Kyron, Zach Moss before, but I think this is a little bit similar to the Vikings. Not like there's different nuances, different shades of how it all falls together. But in terms of a game that has nothing has changed. I loved all the pieces in this game, in particular Puka Nacua. And as the week is going on now, these guys are getting just, it's not quite to the same extent of the Vikings and Panthers, but a little bit less popular, maybe not Kyron, but a little bit less popular because it's like, well, now I can play AOC or DTR or whatever. And now I don't have to play Puka. I can get Keenan, right? I can get Keenan in my lineup now. And oh, by the way, there's no Mike Williams with Keenan, right? I can get Tyreek Hill. I can get Stephon Diggs, whatever. And so I still have like crazy strong conviction in Puka Nacua in this matchup here today. It's a little bit of hand in the dirt, but people that I really, really trust, is where kind of some of the hand in the dirt stuff is coming from. And my own belief that the Colts pass defense is horrid, and it has been horrid for a month now. What do you think about this game? Are you still kind of really running to this one for tournaments, or has anything changed over this week?
No, this is one of my favorite games. It's in the Dome. It's like two concentrated offenses. Like Matthew Stafford is only about, I think, 1,000 more than Dorian Thompson-Robinson on DraftKings, and you can get Matthew Stafford. And like he hasn't had a berserk game, and he's not going to get you rushing yards, but he's going to throw the ball. And the Colts defense is probably overperformed. And people underestimate the effect of playing in a dome. That it's so good for the offenses. You can stack this game kind of however you want. But like the guys like Kyren Williams, Zach Moss, and Puka are probably the guys that are just too underpriced for their roles. That they've shown so far this season. So yeah, you can play this game in cash. You can play a lot of the players from this game in cash, but I wouldn't avoid them in tournaments either. And Puka is probably in a particularly good spot at 7,500. I think he's even cheaper on DraftKings, but he could pile up 6,700 on DraftKings where he's getting full point per receptions, just too cheap. And it was at the Colts defense gives up a bunch of receptions. Like they play some kind of zone thing that's gonna
They played the most snaps of zone defense in the entire NFL. I'll screw up the quote, but it's something along the lines of they basically haven't played man to man all season. And we actually did see this past week with the Bengals is they dialed up a little bit of pressure and played a little more man to man. And Puka had a fine game. I mean, this is what we're talking about. Why I think Puka is so good today is that this was week 3 was a bad game. And the guy went 5 for 75. It's like a bad game is 5 for 75 for this guy. Like that feels like pretty good. Now we get a good matchup. He gets into theoretically the better side of his split from a matchup perspective. And look, at the end of the day, I love Kyren Williams. He projects great. He looks great. Their offense goes as Matthew Stafford goes. And that Kyren Williams isn't going to go load up and go Nick Chubb all over somebody or Christian McCaffrey or whatever. He's kind of just being drug along by the role in the Rams offense. Whereas Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell, those guys are kind of elevating the offense, making plays down the field. And so I lean more into the passing game here, but I'm not going to fault somebody for playing Kyren. He plays every snap. He could fall into the end zone twice and catch a bunch of passes. But I've flag planted Puka Nacua today. I really believe that another big game is coming.
Yeah, no, I think that's at 6,700 on DraftKings in particular. That's not a bad flat plant at all. He's going to have a pretty easy time paying off that price if the offense looks anything like it has looked so far. And there's no reason to think it's not going to going into the dome to play against the Colts defense. It's a good matchup. I think this game's even better priced on DraftKings than on FanDuel, and it's not a game you want to shy away from on FanDuel either. And my order of the players might change a little bit on FanDuel versus DraftKings. I think Anthony Richardson's really good on FanDuel, where those rushing touchdowns will get you full 6 points with lower scores. I might be a little more inclined to play Stafford on DraftKings, where he's cheaper, potential for a 300-yard passing bonus. And Puka's at 6,700, 7,500 is a good price for Puka on FanDuel. 6,700 on DraftKings, he's just too cheap. Kyron's priced up a little bit on FanDuel, so I'd like the running backs a little bit less on FanDuel, but they're two of the higher owned guys on DraftKings.
Yep, I totally agree. To Eric's question, do you prefer from a tournament perspective, and if it's site specific, of course you can give that answer, the Minnesota game or the Miami game, and I'll throw this Rams game in there too. I do think they're the three. I know Denver, Chicago. Look, and some people will say, how could you leave Denver, Chicago off there? But I kind of like these 3 other games a little bit better. How do you rank those games from your priority for game stacks?
So the first one would be the Colts Rams game, then Miami Buffalo, and then Minnesota Carolina. But that's maybe in terms of full game stacks. If I like the idea of taking a couple of pieces, a couple correlated pieces, maybe Miles Sanders, Justin Jefferson, or you maybe throw in maybe Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen in there, because I just don't love the quarterbacks in the Carolina Minnesota game. So that's a tougher game for me to take the quarterbacks from and make a full game stack. Whereas I would do that with Josh Allen and Tua, and just try to find some value that is very risky. I'd rather game stack that the Miami Buffalo game. And then the only thing to be scared of in the Colts Rams game is ownership. Because I think it's going to be highly owned, it should be highly owned. And especially if kind of this later news is making people go to different quarterbacks, maybe playing some different constructions, that's great. If that's taking ownership off of this game, fantastic.
I totally agree. Had me scared there. Somebody in the chat said Sanders out, and I had seen earlier that he was active, and I just wanted to make sure because we'd have had to go all the way back and start over talking about Chuba Hubbard and where he fit into the running back landscape if that would happen. But just to confirm, I'm still seeing Miles Sanders active. Also,
Yeah.
Tyler Higbee confirmed active as well. So if you were hoping to play Bryson Hopkins at tight end, sorry to the Bryson Hopkins folks.
Actually,
I want to talk.
I'll throw Higbee in there as like part of that Rams-Colts game.
Yeah.
You should not ignore.
Yeah.
Tight end is weak this week. Like anytime Travis Kelce's not on the main slate, like it's like tight end is just a wasteland now. So I'd go for Tyler Higbee. I think he's like 5,100 on FanDuel. Like that's way too cheap. And actually at tight end, like Mark Andrews, now that I think about it, because Odell Beckham and Bateman are both out. So that's a possibility as well.
Yep. Tough matchup with the Browns, but volume rules all. Volume and talent at tight end can rule all. And if they're not going to be able to run, the Ravens, if they're going to move the ball at all, it has to be through the air. And shout out to Nelson Aguilar and Devin Duvernay and stuff, but those guys are going to catch some passes, but they're not going to be the one leading the scoring charges. It's going to be Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. So I definitely like Andrews. I also want to bring up, we pivoted to tight end. Dead Ward says, is Kittle a good play? And this is another guy who, as the week has gone on, I just been like gravitating to, because we're all like trying to figure out these crappy punts. And I get it. Trust me, I'm usually punting off tight end with these losers that are down there in the 3K range. But Kittle's price has come down, particularly on DraftKings at 5,100. We can afford it this week if you really want to. It's really not hard to get a guy at 5K at tight end. And you want to talk about, not necessarily because he had the two big games against Arizona, although it is a good matchup for him. It's also just like George Kittle has right there with Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews at the highest weekly ceiling. He doesn't offer the floor and consistency that those guys do. Well, at least not that Kelce does, but he pops off for 30 plus 40 fantasy points every single year. This is a matchup that he can do it in. And then if we really want to like squint, Brandon Ayuk has been hurt. I know he's back. Deebo Samuel has been hurt and is supposed to play today, but it's probably not 100%. Juwan Jennings is out. It's like you start getting thin on potential targets here. Maybe if some things move away from those wide receivers, it's definitely Kittle. He just continues to like really stand out for me in tournaments at tight end. What do you think about George Kittle?
Yeah, he's the only tight end I have tagged in lineup HQ. It's a great matchup. The 49ers have the highest implied point total on the week, and it's like one of the things that's most correlated with fantasy production is implied point total. I liked to play a little bit more if Deebo was going to miss the game. Deebo's in, but yeah, maybe he's a little bit banged up, and maybe if they're favored by 2 touchdowns, maybe they're not like overloading their banged up players. George Kittle does. He always has like one or two like tremendous games. The opportunity cost of tight end is not very high. He's one of the few tight ends that can really go berserk, right? We wouldn't like be shocked if he scored 2-3 touchdowns at the end of today. And San Francisco is going to score points. So it's just a question of who's going to score them. Like Brock Purdy's probably under-owned as well. I think his ownership's been going up throughout the week, but I wonder if that reverses now.
Right back down today. Yeah.
Yeah, where we've got like some of these cheaper quarterbacks. Like, why would you not play, like the quarterback and tight end from the team with the highest implied point total in the week? I think I think Kittle's a great call. And I think that's also like an interesting like option you can go to maybe if you're late swapping into some of the afternoon games.
I like that too. Yeah. If you have Keenan, Devontae, whoever in the afternoon games, looking to Kittle to try to get yourself a little distance if need be. But I might just play him anyway. I think he's an outstanding tournament play. 6,300 on FanDuel is a more than reasonable price, and 5,100 on DraftKings I think is kind of criminally low. And like you said with the 49ers thing, if you take a step back, sometimes it's like, who do you want to have players from? It's not that simple because players have to have a projection and a target share, and they have to have a role and upside and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, we know Kittle has those. If I'm going to go to tight end, like, am I going to play chalk Pat Freiermuth on the Steelers when like we're worried about Gerald Everett? We need to be worried about Pat Freiermuth too. That dude doesn't get any targets, and Darnell Washington is playing, but everybody's okay because he's a little cheaper, right? And it's Houston, so like people are going to play that. Like, give me 800. I only need to pay 800 more for George Kittle over Pat Freiermuth. Like, sign me up at a third of the ownership. So again, I don't want to keep talking about Kittle, but he just keeps standing out to me as like a really strong play today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100% on board.
Another question from Jeffrey. AR, Anthony Richardson, or Stafford? If you want, we talked a lot about the Rams-Colts game. We both loved that game. Who's your preference to play at quarterback in a stack of that game?
Probably Anthony Richardson. I'd like if I'm playing single entry, I'd be more likely to play Anthony Richardson just because he's got a ton of upside. Like it's looking at the game log, it doesn't shout out that like he only played one quarter of that second game. So I think I mean, the concern would be, are they going to shy away from running him? Like maybe especially at the goal line because he's coming back from a concussion. So that would be something that, like maybe he doesn't run it in from the goal line. Maybe he's running it in from the 20-yard line. So I think he's got as much upside. Like he's one of my favorite quarterbacks on the slate.
I love it. Let's see here. I'm trying to make sure I get all you guys' questions because we've kind of hit a lot of the main games. We'll of course touch on a handful of more things, non-question related. Tyler Boyd. Nothing for me on Tyler Boyd, but that game we can segue that into a little bit of that game. I do like, we talked about Chig and Jamar Chase in particular for tournaments, to me look real nice in this particular game. The game is not very fun, so that's probably why we haven't talked about it quite as much, but there are appealing pieces. Treylon Burks is out. Joe Burrow is playing and theoretically a little bit healthier. And the Tennessee pass defense is really susceptible. So I think that there are too many good plays, even at cheaper prices, like Tyler Boyd, where I can save money that I don't have to go to a wide receiver 3 on an offense with a quarterback that can't move. But, I get it. I do like some pieces in this game, though. What do you think about Boyd and Bengals-Titans?
I do like Boyd more on DraftKings. And I like
cheap.
Boyd. Yeah, I like Boyd better than T. Higgins, price considered. Because it's a good matchup for him. And like Tennessee, people like to attack the Tennessee pass defense. I feel like they give up more receptions than like a bunch of long touchdowns.
Right.
And so that's like kind of Tyler Boyd's game. The issue is also though that he is very cheap. Like if there's a matchup you're going to play him in, this is a good matchup. He just doesn't have those explosive games. Like I think maybe had 2 games last season where you really wanted to be playing Tyler Boyd. So I think it's probably and he was like still cheap last season. So the concern is matchup, and he's like not great enough of a value to play in cash, but he's more of a cash type player. But if you have 4,100 and it makes sense in your lineup, like I would not shy away from playing Tyler Boyd, particularly on DraftKings.
Yep, I think that makes a ton of sense. Just want to reiterate, if you are just joined us, we talked a little bit about Chig Okonkwo, I think is another good tight end play here today. No Treylon Burks. The Titans are – it's a tough year to be a Titans fan. Let's just say that much. Don't watch the offense. Just hope that the fantasy points come in a few hours. But I think Chig – better days are coming, in particular for Chig. DeAndre Hopkins a little less so, but without Treylon Burks, the ball's got to go somewhere, and Nick Westbrook-Akine ain't getting 10 targets. So I think both those guys make for appealing options. I prefer the tight end. But there's some interesting things in that game. I just think the other game environments, like if I'm loading up on a game stack, I like pieces in the Bengals-Titans. I like the other games in terms of like projecting a real blow up. Another tight end. We're talking tons of tight ends. That running backs and tight ends, theme of the show today, and shitty rookie quarterbacks. That's what we're talking about. Eric asked about Zach Ertz, another cheap tight end who went back into his shell apparently last week after tons of targets, and he bounced back belief in Zach Ertz.
I mean, he's fine. I'm not going out of my way. I could probably rather play Pat Freiermuth than Zach Ertz. Like matchup against San Francisco is not great. They're not expected to score a bunch of points. So I mean, but he's fine. Like if whatever price he is, like if that's how much you have left, it's just there's a lot. Like it's 3,200. Like I'd probably rather play Chig Okonkwo. I'd probably rather play Dalton Kincaid, honestly, than Zach Ertz. But you might feel differently, and that's not crazy. It's just not my preferred option.
Yep, that is how I feel. I read this as Jason Garrett first, and so it had me shook a little bit, but I wasn't sure about the only tight end thing. But he mentions Philly can't stop the tight ends, and I think that just points out Logan Thomas at 3,100 I'm not excited about Washington scoring a bunch of my Commanders are not going to necessarily score a bunch of points today, but I think Logan Thomas is a very good cheap tight end option. Look, we don't have to like him. We don't have to like the Commanders. Logan Thomas is going to play because he's back from the concussion protocol, and they use their tight ends. They use their tight ends all over the field. The reason why Jahan Dotson and those guys are not having big seasons is because Logan Thomas and John Bates and Cole Turner are soaking up tons of targets. And so if Logan consolidates those, they're definitely going to be chasing points, right? You got to score to hang with the Eagles. I think Logan Thomas is maybe the best punt tight end. He's right up there with, particularly on DraftKings, the best punt tight ends.
Yeah, I think we both talked up Logan Thomas in week 1 and said he might get injured next week, but you don't need him next week. You're playing him this week, and he literally got injured the next week. But it is like Washington passes to the tight ends, and like was it Eric Bieniemy's like bringing the offense, like it seemed to do well for Travis Kelce. There's obviously a big difference in Travis Kelce and Logan Thomas, but I think Logan Thomas is definitely in play, and I don't think he's going to see a ton of ownership either. But he's absolutely right in there as maybe my favorite of the lower owned punt tight ends.
I love it. Oh my gosh, here we're getting in the deep cuts here as we get closer to the end of the show. Keith asks if Debo is out, which to be clear, Debo is expected to play.
Yeah.
That doesn't always happen. Deshaun Watson was expected to play and is not playing. But just in case, Keith talks about Ronnie Bell in a stack. If Debo is out, I think that's because Juwan Jennings is also out. I think so. That's a deep tournament cut, but I understand where you're coming from. In terms of like a late swap, is there anybody later, like cheap options that, okay, Ronnie Bell isn't there. I just need a punt, maybe an afternoon slate, or like I said, a late swap. Anybody in the afternoon you like?
For cheaper than 3,400 late slates only. You're pretty down there. Like I would probably go like Ray McLeod. If I'm not playing Ronnie Bell, I think Ronnie Bell would be the guy though. But we are, like, to be clear, we're expecting Debo to play.
Yep. Just so that everybody is clear. Yeah. Also, shout out TJ. I did just see this while we were sitting here. Interesting
Miami's
just
out.
The Dolphins got to win today because this is just not going well for our literally for the Heat here, rocking some Heat gear. That's funny.
Actually,
get shook.
Back to the last question. Rondale Moore would be a pivot. Sorry.
There we go. Good one.
Over Ray McLeod.
Good one. Rondale usage looked a little better last week. Obviously, long touchdown run is probably not going to happen every single week, but if you need one, right? I think he makes a ton of sense. Let's get into just the last couple of really quickly. I want to talk about defenses. Actually, we can't always get to the defenses, but here I'm on DraftKings and I sort by ownership, and we do see the Ravens now coming in at a pretty hefty ownership with Deshaun Watson out. I'm not saying that doesn't make sense, but the one thing I will say is I'm not sure you want Deshaun Watson out for the defense that you're targeting. I mean, DTR might not be good, but Deshaun Watson makes a ton of turnover-worthy plays. He takes sacks. He holds the ball. He runs around like a madman. He threw the ball backwards last week at one point. Like, the Ravens seem fine to me, but I'm probably not going to chase the ownership. I actually do still like the Browns on the other side on DraftKings a little bit better. The Ravens also banged up. We talked about they don't really have a lot of options in their offense outside of Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. Also, the Browns might have the best defense in the NFL, which is not necessarily, as you've outlined so perfectly tons of times on the show, not going to be synonymous with scoring the most fantasy points every single week. But it certainly doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt you to have a bunch of really good players on defense and a great pass rush. So those are the top two defenses in ownership. Anybody else that's standing out for you? What do you think about those two?
So I like the idea of boosting the Ravens defense, given the quarterback news. Although you bring up a good point, maybe Deshaun Watson wouldn't be terrible either. The Ravens are going on the road though, and actually one of the defenses like not listed there, the Chargers, is 100 cheaper than the Ravens even.
Yep.
And they're facing AOC. So she's just finishing up her duties in Congress, running out, to play against the Chargers defense. I don't know if it's going to go well, and the Chargers are at home. So I would strongly consider the Chargers defense up there with the Ravens.
I like it. I want to see if I can I haven't got too far because I also like the Chargers. I've probably been a little bit too lazy on the defensive side of things, but I really like the Browns. I really like the Chargers. I think one thing I will say, I really like some of those shootout games that we talked about. Minnesota, Carolina looks good. Rams, Colts looks good, etc. But those also can be sometimes the best defenses to play. The Rams defense stinks, but Anthony Richardson is a rookie, and I know he looks awesome. We're excited to play him, but that doesn't mean he's not going to throw an interception. It doesn't mean he's not going to fumble, right? It doesn't mean he's not going to get sacked by Aaron Donald or whatever. The flip side is also true. The Rams offensive line is horrible. We saw that last week. Why did they struggle on offense last week? Because the offensive line is really bad. The Colts have actually gotten pressure so far this year. Now, that doesn't mean Puka's not going to have a big game, right? Like we talked about earlier, but it does mean that the Colts could get a bunch of sacks on Matthew Stafford, and all, that happens, and the Rams are going to throw, dude. The Rams are going to throw 40 something times every single week, no matter what, because they can't run that efficiently. So I like, some of those defenses. Carolina, right? Kirk Cousins has been known to throw the back-breaking pick six occasionally. Bryce Young hasn't looked awesome. So I think that those defenses that look like they suck are still actually pretty appealing for this tournament slate because they're in the games that could produce the most, big defensive plays.
I really like the call of like a Rams or Colts defense because they're not going to, I don't think you're going to see as high ownership as we're showing here because people don't like to play players against their own defense. And like the players in that game are such screaming values. We don't know until the game actually starts, like who's going to actually be a screaming value. So like if either of these offenses fails, then I think they could be a good high scoring defense. They're playing in the dome, a little bit easier to run those picks back for pick sixes. So yeah, I think the Rams and Colts defense is actually really intriguing, and they're even cheaper than the Ravens and the Chargers.
I like it. Before we start to bring on in our friends here in just a minute, any like kind of tournament hot takes, things we haven't gotten to, right? I think we've addressed most of the tournament slate and things that are the most interesting to me, but anything that we kind of haven't gotten to that that has stood out to you that's maybe a priority for you today?
I think we covered everything. Don't shy away from the defenses against the rookie quarterbacks. We mentioned Alvin Kamara. I think he's going to go criminally underowned for a player that has like a huge broad range of outcomes. The Colts Rams game I think is probably my favorite value game on the slate. Yeah,
it's one of those where actually both now Jefferson and Hawkinson are really expensive, and there's concerns about Madison, of course, with Akers. But it's one of those where it'll go wrong, but where I feel like everybody in like the Rams Colts game and everybody in the Vikings Panthers game, I'm like I really struggle to see how these guys don't have good games. Like, are they going to win me a tournament? I don't know. But even like the Keenan Allens and those guys of the world, like you outlined, it's like, what if AOC just like can't move the ball? They're grinding it out. Like Keenan isn't going to catch a bunch of 80-yard touchdowns. So he needs the volume and the passing volume if they don't need to throw quite as much. I'm not saying that, but I can at least tell myself that story with the Rams. It's like, I can't tell myself a story that they don't, other than the Colts defense, I guess. Right. So it's kind of like, I'm probably going to play some Rams, or I'm going to play the Colts defense, or I'm going to play Puka with the Colts defense because he's going to catch a bunch of passes if the Colts defense scores a defensive touchdown. So that's pretty much, it for tournaments. I do just want to point out, because we talked about AOC quite a bit. I don't think you have to stack those two cheap quarterbacks depending upon the tournament that you are in. There are ways to win with a cheap quarterback, even guys that aren't like huge rushers like DTR and AOC, that don't require Devontae Adams at $8,000 to be the tournament winning wide receiver, right? A QB sneak. DTR can run a little bit. He throws a touchdown to freaking Jordan Akins. And like, if no quarterbacks, really separate from the field, but the expensive guys do, right? Christian McCaffrey scores 40, or Justin Jefferson scores 40, or whatever. Devontae Adams can have a very fine game, but not be the optimal $8,000 wide receiver on DraftKings. So I am still interested in those quarterbacks. I don't know yet exactly what I'm going to do, but I wanted to point that out because people will be like, oh, if you're playing AOC, do I have to play Devontae Adams? No, you definitely don't. I actually do like Jacoby Myers as a cheap stacking option because he's the only other guy that gets targets in their offense. So if AOC is going to have a good game, it's probably him. But like DTR, like, dude, if you don't want to play Elijah Moore or Amari Cooper or whatever with DTR and just say, he's going to get me 20 and that's going to win me tournaments because of what it lets me get in my lineup, especially in like some smaller field stuff. I think that that's totally okay. What do you think about that kind of last little nuance of this slate?
Yeah, so I think that's just dependent on, do the higher priced players have outstanding games? Like, so if Christian McCaffrey has a had to have it score, if Justin Jefferson also puts up a score you basically need to have to win a tournament, then yeah, it makes those 4,100, 4,600 quarterbacks much more appealing. I'd still rather try to find $500 and play Kenny Pickett. I guess maybe one closing thought is, I think about what's popular that you're not playing in your lineup and like play against that. Like, so if you're not playing any Colts, like then the Rams defense makes a lot of sense. If you're not playing like Josh Allen or, any pieces from, if you're not playing like Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs, like maybe James Cook, then is an option that you want to consider if that's like around where, you need a running back price.
Kincaid at tight end, right? You don't have a Bill, but maybe you even have Tyreek or whatever. Like you said, looking at that's kind of the Kittle thesis for me is like, my God, the 49ers are going to score a boatload of points, but I just don't, I don't have CMC. I don't really want to play the wide receivers. So like the process of elimination is like, well, I don't really love any tight ends. Why wouldn't I just play George Kittle then? He clearly has a, a ceiling to break the slate. TJ, Kristi, Brit, what's going on, guys? Welcome. We got black cats in the background and all sorts of fun. TJ, how's it going? I see you. Are you a Celtics fan? Or are you just excited about the trade, or what? You're hyped in the chat about Drew Holiday to the Celtics.
So people were asking questions about it, and I brought it up, so I figured I'd just facilitate those questions. But so it's weird. I'm a Raptors fan, but when I was watching basketball when I was little, my favorite color is green, and so I started liking the Celtics too, not realizing that they were in the same division, and then it just kind of stuck. And so I do like both the Raptors and the Celtics. If I have to only choose one, it's Raps. But I'm also just excited about that trade. I think like as soon as that Lillard domino fell, I think the Celtics and Bucks may arguably be the two best teams in the league now. And Portland's gotten a ton of value and could potentially still flip Brogdon and give Ayton a ton of usage for the first half of the season, flip him too. So it's exciting.
Definitely got me excited for NBA season. Finally, I was worried we weren't going to get the Lillard trade and it was going to be a little bit of a disaster, but a lot of fun. Brit, a little bit of a different form of chaos on this NFL slate. A bunch of crappy backup rookie quarterbacks and all sorts of fun. But how are you feeling here 45 minutes from lock?
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Doing good. I was trying to get about 4,000 more bets on scores and odds for everybody, but busy making bets. Going to be very interested to talk to Kristi from the qualifier, more single entry stuff, and TJ, how they're handling more so on DraftKings, the cheap quarterbacks, because they just give you a ceiling. I think I'm going to roll out AOC and cash on DraftKings personally.
Oh yeah,
to get a lot of the higher priced wide receivers. But yeah, going to be a fun little show here to close it out.
Kristi, I'm going to, of course, watch you guys' show. But before John and I get out of here, how are you feeling about this slate with these quarterbacks? How are you processing it so far this morning?
I know it's been a little bit different where I've definitely made some shifts and changes this morning as some of the news has broken. So yeah, I've definitely made some changes. We'll kind of talk through that a little bit. Like you said, opens up a lot of things, especially on DraftKings with AOC there. So yeah, a lot of great things to talk through this morning with the crew.
Awesome. Well, that will do it for John and myself. Thanks everybody in the chat for joining us. And these three definitely got you guys covered. You're in good hands. The rest of the way, good luck in week 4, and we'll see you guys next week. You guys have a good show. Peace.
All right. Thanks, Erik and John, for doing the last show. Dean. Oh, man, I forgot who else was on with Dean. The Millionaire. Just a whole bunch of people doing all the shows on.
Bobby and Tim.
Yeah, Bobby and Tim. Yeah, but let's get into this real quick, guys. Get the likes up here. It's not Spidey Bomb season, but we still need likes here on this show. I'll throw a couple of bets out over the course of the show. We appreciate the likes. Kristi, I'm just going to jump right into you with this from the quarterback angle here. We just talked about that at the beginning. What changes have you made from your tournament pool, et cetera? I think it's more so on DraftKings. What have you done with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers? How are you handling that? Just what's your overall thoughts? And then we can throw in the Cleveland situation. We're not really on that. Maybe your defenses can mix up a little bit there.
Absolutely. It sure has changed a lot. There's a lot of different quarterbacks that I was targeting to start the week. Had a lot of interest in Tua. Fields is projecting well. But yeah, knowing that AOC is starting opens up a ton on DraftKings. You mentioned, Brit, that great cash game play, but I also like him for tournaments too, just because it does open it up. I mean, you can play high-end running backs that are going to go overlooked. I know McCaffrey is going to be a little bit more popular with Mitchell projected to be out. However, you can get guys like Pollard, guys at the top that we love on the receiving side, Tyreek and Jefferson and Jamar Chase, who's in a great spot this week, Stephon Diggs. I mean, there's a lot of higher price guys that it really allows you to pay up. So definitely a guy, AOC, definitely a guy that I'm interested in both tournaments and cash. It is just going to drive down the ownership in some of the plays that were a little bit more popular heading into Sunday. But yeah, it's going to be a great tournament slate, I think, for sure this week.
All right, from a tournament perspective on DraftKings, would you rather play Tony Pollard, Jamar Chase? You can throw in Stephon Diggs too there. So what the high-end running back or the high-end wide receiver for you today?
The more I've kind of looked at it, I love Tony Pollard, super fan of his. I mean, he can definitely break a slate too. Chase is projected to be a little bit more popular. I really like Tony Pollard for tournaments today, and think he makes a great spot. TJ,
what are your thoughts on the quarterback change? It just it's more DraftKings specific. We'll talk FanDuel in just a little bit, but the slate's been flipped on its head with what we're available to do now in terms of salary.
So I built a couple O'Connell teams. I've already seen a couple people asking in chat, who is AOC? It's the starting quarterback this week for the Raiders.
It's not the representative from here in New York. She is not. She's not playing.
No. We truly don't know which of them would be better at this point, because we've never seen this dude play. He hasn't even dressed so far this year. He's been on the practice squad the whole time. So I'm probably on more of the same train as Squirrel from the show before. I'm probably just mainly going to ignore these backup quarterbacks who are starting now and just enjoy the lesser ownership on the Anthony Richardsons, the Tua Tagovailoas, and the other quarterbacks I'm looking forward to playing today. I did build a couple of O'Connell teams. Just because of that game environment. Like I did a couple like full stacks where almost everybody in my lineup is from that game. And then I did another one in a single entry where I used him and paid up for all my favorite receivers. But for the most part, I'm just sticking with the same guys I was before. Anthony Richardson is my favorite quarterback on the slate for cash, single entry, tournaments, all of it. And then my favorite pivots are Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, and Justin Fields. The Fields one I recognize is terrifying, but he is nice and cheap. He allows me to pay up for some stuff, and I don't have to stack with him, which I like. And then I'm also getting to some Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, and Lamar Jackson.
Over under 1.5 starting quarterbacks getting benched this week, Kristi. So we're looking at Zach Wilson. We're looking at Justin Fields. Anyone else? These guys are in some serious trouble, if you ask me.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. And I should also mention too, on the quarterback side, a guy that I tagged to TJ's point, Tua, I really like him a lot today. He always goes overlooked, and look what he's done. I mean, it's just been amazing. One of the highest total game environments of the slate. I like both sides of that a lot. And it's just going to drive his ownership down. I mean, we've got him projected at 4% ownership. So definitely like him. Probably one of my favorite tournament plays today for QB.
Yeah, with the O'Connell boosting up into the 10% tournament range more for the large field tournaments on DraftKings. You get access to Lamar Jackson and Tua and some of these other guys, because no one was going to play Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, some people were, because you can stack them pretty easily, but O'Connell at the 4K price tag is certainly bumping up the ownership. So I like that. Anyone else at quarterback, Kristi, you're interested in? If you had to choose at the high end, is it Josh Allen? Is it Jalen Hurts for you? They project pretty similarly according to RotoGrinders.
Yeah, I actually do like Josh Allen. I really like both sides of that game. I think I just prefer Tua on the tournament side because of the lower ownership, but I certainly like both of them. I also like Justin Herbert a lot. That game environment, just a lot of great pieces. With Mike Williams out, I mean, Keenan Allen, great price tag over on DraftKings and just getting a ton of looks. So I definitely like that. Brock Purdy always seems to go overlooked too. And I mean, there's just a lot of fantasy goodness in there. He always seems to get disrespected, but I have a lot of interest in him. I think he's a great play. 4% ownership that we're seeing him on. McCaffrey projects well, but I also, we'll get to that in a little bit, but I like Kittle a lot, Brandon Ayuk. I think he can stack up that game on the San Francisco side and looks pretty enticing for tournaments.
Yeah, with Debo, not 100%, maybe you can make a little inference that maybe it's McCaffrey, maybe it's Kittle, maybe it's Ayuk that get a little more work, just narrows the target tree just a smidge, which you do need in San Francisco, such a high-powered offense. But Purdy has, I think, in all but one of his regular season starts, he has 2 or more passing touchdowns. That plays at 5,900. O'Connell's just going to eat into a bunch of that ownership, in my opinion. TJ, anything else to quarterback, or you want to move to running back?
No, we can move to running back. I'm just busy tilting, realizing in this morning game I was Drake London getting one more reception away from another perfect Prize Picks article. But moving on to running back, I'm sad we didn't get Chuba Hubbard. I really wanted a nice cheap Hubbard day going up against Minnesota if Sanders was going to be out, because he just made so many things work for me. But having said that, I still like Miles Sanders in his spot. My favorite 2 of the day are in the same game. It's Kyren Williams, it's Zach Moss. Christian McCaffrey without Elijah Mitchell is going to be one of my priority spend ups. He is the one running back that I'm prioritizing as much
What
as.
What do your lineups with CMC look like? Because man, even with AOC on DraftKings, I think I really like the high end wide receivers. They're all in amazing spots today. How do you get to CMC? I was having trouble personally today.
It's basically just instead of Tyreek Hill. It's just you do CMC instead of Tyreek Hill. Maybe you use Waddle in that lineup, or maybe I actually don't even hate that. I'm getting to a lot of Tua, but I have a couple lineups where I have a cheap Bills D in there too. And so if I have a McCaffrey, I don't mind using a cheap Bills D, assuming Tyreek doesn't do anything and they solve that Miami offense a little bit. So McCaffrey is the one expensive guy I'm prioritizing. Kyren Williams, Zach Moss, Josh Kelly are my other 3 highest owned running backs. And then I am getting to a little bit of Ezekiel Elliott as well. Just, it's a super tough defense, and that news that he's starting might just mean he plays the first drive, and then nothing else. And then, but I do think there is some increased likelihood he falls into the end zone against Dallas if they do get there. Larger field stuff, guys, I'm getting to a little bit less, but I still really like James Cook, Miles Sanders, Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Swift, and I'm still getting to a little bit of Ford, Mostert, Achan, Josh Jacobs.
All right, so real quick for cash, the guys I'm looking at, the 6K tier, very strong on DraftKings. You've got Moss, you've got Kyren Williams. If you're picking between one of them, I would probably take Williams over that. You've got DeAndre Swift is 5,700. I think he's certainly in play. I know Kristi likes Tony Pollard. How do you not like him with him getting all the work in the red zone? Maybe he gets into the end zone there. I'm having trouble personally in cash getting up to McCaffrey. I prefer the Chases, the Diggs, that 8K-ish tier, Keenan Allen, right? These guys just look absolutely insane today, in my opinion. So I'm more on those than the Pollard, but I get that. Just CMC, you expect him to get more work, more everything with the backup out. Really, really good spot for him. Is a huge home favorite. Maybe he gets the multi-touchdown game that has eluded him this year. What do you think, Kristi, for tournaments? How are you handling it? Just the mid-tier range on DraftKings is just loaded. FanDuel, you got to spend a little bit more. What's the differences between the 2 sites for you there?
Yeah, I would say McCaffrey is definitely a guy, even in tournaments too, I am definitely prioritizing. I think it just makes a ton of sense. And I know Kyren Williams, like you both have mentioned, great cash play and GPP play. On the tournament side, Javonte Williams is one that's standing out. He's a really good value on FanDuel, I would say. But I also really like him on DraftKings. A great game environment today. I actually just watched Chicago play in Kansas City last week, and Javonte should have a really good day today. I mean, Chicago just wasn't impressive in any regards, offensively or defensively. So like that play a lot. Tony Pollard that I mentioned, I just think because of his price and because of those receivers, again, that you mentioned, paying up for Brit, it's going to be hard to get to him. Certainly like him. DeAndre Swift, I think, was going to be a little bit more popular as the week started, but obviously have interest in him. I think, TJ, you mentioned Josh Kelly, who has done nothing with the role with Eckler being out. But I do think it is a good matchup, and, it's going to carry his ownership down just a little bit. And I do think it's someone that you want to keep in your player pool. James Cook is somebody too, kind of in that mid-tier running back, that 6K range. Another really, really good option. And then a guy too, I know TJ mentioned Zeke, but Ramondre Stevenson, especially over on FanDuel, he's I think 6.3 or 6.4K, kind of an interesting guy. He could get a couple touchdowns too. He certainly been getting good rushing attempts. Don't mind that. And then I'll also throw in Alvin Kamara, who's back, and in his first game. I mean, there's a big range of outcomes for this guy, but boy, he is certainly worth it in tournaments. He's a guy that I have in a couple tournament lineups over on FanDuel in particular, but just 6.1K on DraftKings. I think he's just an amazing tournament play.
Yeah, I have Kamara. I just have a couple tournament teams today, and Kamara did make one of them for me. I think it's an interesting swerve off the Williams, off the Moss. What do you guys think of Moss? I don't know if either of you really mentioned him with Richardson back. Obviously, I think the close yardage touchdown probably takes a little bit of regression for him, and the expectation of that takes a back seat. But, I mean, if you're playing 80, 90, 100% of the snaps, I really don't care if you factor in, 15 to 20 rush attempts, 3 to 5 targets, obviously upside for more, upside for a touchdown. Who would you choose between him and Kyron if you had to have one of them today? I'll start with you, Kristi.
If I had to have one of them, I'm probably still going with Kyron, but it's really close. Like you said, he's out there on the field a lot. We didn't really touch on him, but I do think, excuse me, he is a good play today for sure.
TJ, what's your take on basically that 6K tier on DraftKings?
I did mention him. He's my second favorite behind Kyron. And so Kyron and Moss are my two highest owned running backs today. It depends on my lineup construction. I'm doing a lot of Kyron with Anthony Richardson, and I'm doing a lot of Zach Moss and Puka Nacua together. And so it really just depends on my lineup construction. I'm trying to make sure I get a piece of each of these teams in most of my lineups. And so it's Richardson or Moss, and it's Williams, Atwell, or Nacua.
All right. Let's go to wide receiver. I'll get you a couple of bets. Get your sportsbooks apps ready. I believe we are brought to you by FanDuel. Go check out their sports betting app. They have a nice offer for you guys. If you are new in sports betting in one of those sports betting states, you can get some bonus bets from FanDuel. All right, TJ, let's talk wide receiver. So how do you separate? Right, I've got Keenan, Jefferson, Diggs, Hill, Chase, and Adams here up at the top. I think they're all clear in a tier. Adams maybe got a little bit of a knock with Aiden O'Connell coming in at quarterback instead of Jimmy Garoppolo. First, how are you handling Adams in tournaments? And then break down, maybe you can factor in ownership, whatever it takes to kind of separate these guys at the top.
Yeah, so Keenan Allen is the priority today. I'm getting him in about half of my lineups. He's in most of I set a rule today in MME, and then in my hand-built lineups that I did, I abided by it as well. And I want to have at least one Charger in every single lineup today. And so it's mostly Keenan Allen or Josh Kelly, but it's also a lot of Josh Palmer. It's a lot of Gerald Everett, and even a little bit of Donald Parham and Quentin Johnston. And so Keenan Allen is my number one priority today. I love Hill and Diggs, but I'm probably going to be a little bit over the field on them, but they do fall below Keenan Allen for me. And then I'm actually prioritizing Puka Nacua over Diggs and Hill as well. I'm trying to get as much as I can, but Nacua at 6,700 versus 9,200 for Hill. Nacua is the slight priority for me there. To save salary, I really like Tank Dell, Tutu Atwell, Zay Flowers. I'm getting to a lot of Josh Downs because he's so incredibly cheap, and I want to play him with Anthony Richardson. And then Jamar Chase I like, but he actually is picking up more ownership than I thought he was going to be. But in larger field stuff, I absolutely love Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, and Gabe Davis, three really high upside players who are picking up next to no ownership today.
All right, I'm going to talk cash real quick, and then I'll ask Kristi some tournament thoughts. So cash, wide receivers, both sites, you're probably – FanDuel, it's pretty hard to get to the Keenan Allens and stuff. So you're probably in the Chase, Devontae, Adams – well, even Adams is reasonably over there.
I think you have to prioritize Allen.
even on FanDuel, it's just really hard for me to get to him over there. So I like Chase.
That's fair.
Based on that short yardage targets they were throwing to him last week with Burrow hiding the calf injury. This is against Tennessee. It doesn't get any better really than a top end receiver against Tennessee. So I like Chase. He's a priority for me on both sites. You've got Puka on FanDuel at 7,500. I know I was on Puka in cash on DraftKings before switching to O'Connell as my cash quarterback, because now I can just play the elite wide receiver. Well, maybe not the elite wide receivers, but I can play Diggs, Chase, and Keenan Allen, etc. on DraftKings. TJ, what did you want to throw in here?
I think you actually do bring up a great point about the difference between Allen and Nakua specifically on FanDuel versus DraftKings, because those are the two guys that you want them to catch 12 plus receptions today. And on a point per reception site like DraftKings, that's so important. And on FanDuel, they're more expensive and it's only half point per reception. So I do think those are major priorities on DraftKings. And I do think you could let them fall by the wayside a little bit on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think Puka, just with his price point, is still he's a very, very strong play on FanDuel. On both sites, you could probably play DeAndre Hopkins as well. I really like you got to have two of Keenan, Diggs, Chase, in my opinion. You can throw in Jefferson or Hill if you wanted to do one of those. On the low end, you're probably going to need a cheap wide receiver. I think my preferences would be Josh Palmer, Tank Dell, and then Adam Thielen for a cheap wide receiver. Dart throw, DJ Shark. Maybe catching a deep ball. He's a little interesting for me as a tournament play. All right, Kristi, cash tournaments. What are you thinking at wide receiver? Either site, go.
Yep. You mentioned a lot of the guys at the high end, and I think to make things work on DraftKings, I do like Adam Thielen. I know he's going to be popular, but I really like him going up against the Vikings here. The volume has been solid, so he's a play I really like, and I'm probably a little
Kristi,
bit.
I want to ask you on Thielen. So even Thielen with Andy Dalton, we're all going nuts earlier in the week. It's sort of subsided a little bit, but
Yes.
I mean, who else are they going to throw the ball to? Plus, it's the Vikings. So I think the projection maybe took a little bit of a hit in my mind, but you're still basically full go on Adam Thielen.
I am. He was bummed to leave Minnesota the way that he did. This is going to be a game for him. So I have a lot of interest in Jefferson, and he's just the natural bring back for me. So yeah, it doesn't downgrade him much for me. I still have probably about 30% exposure to him in my wide receiver pool. So like him a lot. A couple guys on tournament that we haven't really talked about. We talked a lot about the Buffalo-Miami game. Got to throw Jalen Waddle out there for one. I mean, he's going to get overlooked. And how many times have we seen Tua, Tyreek, and Waddle all on winning lineups? So I really like the double stack there. Another guy in that game, he can certainly put up some big games. He hasn't done much lately. Gabe Davis. Yep, that's exactly right.
I knew I can read your mind.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you know what? I mean, exactly. He's not going to carry any ownership, and he could put up 2 points or he could put up 30 points. So definitely someone that you want to get in your tournament pool. So like him quite a bit there. Some other guys, just Tutu Atwell. He's a guy that I really like too. I know there's a lot of talk about Puka, but I really like him. In fact, I know I've got him on one of my tournament lineups too on FanDuel, and he tends to go a little bit overlooked there as well. Also throw like Cortland Sutton out in that Denver Chicago game as a good tournament play. Have him at about 10% ownership now. He's kind of in that mid-tier range too. So I think a lot with AOC opening things up, people are going to pay up for receivers. And so some of these mid-tier guys are really going to go somewhat overlooked. Tank Dell, I think you mentioned him too, just gets a ton of volume, a lot of interest there. Jacoby Myers, another kind of mid-tier guy that I like in there. Devontae Adams, of course, will be popular, but certainly don't mind him. So yeah, those are the guys that I'm kind of looking at, I guess, for tournaments as well.
All right.
A couple other things I wanted to touch on at receiver too is especially on both sites, the Tennessee wide receivers with no Traylon Burks today, DeAndre Hopkins, and even Westbrook Ikine. I like those guys today.
I just was going to say that too. DeAndre Hopkins is the last guy. I think he's absolutely fantastic and just a great play there alongside Jamar Chase. So yeah, glad you mentioned him.
And then these two is specifically on FanDuel, if you're trying to get first place in a large field GPP and you want to stack up this highest total game on the slate, Miami and Buffalo, I think really, really interesting ways to do it are Deontay Hardy, $4,400 on FanDuel, just massive salary saving option there. And then also Braxton Berrios for Miami. He's 4,800. There's no Craycraft. He could end up getting a bunch more targets. He could easily end up scoring like a gadget touchdown in this spot. I think those two pieces are really interesting ways of expanding your stacks. So instead of just doing Allen with Diggs, do Allen, Diggs, Davis, Hardy, and then throw it back with Hill on the other side. Instead of just doing Tua, do Tua, Hill, one of Hill and Waddle, and throw in Smythe and Berrios, because then if Tua throws 5 touchdown passes today and you got the couple cheap guys in there that he throws those touchdown passes to, it still allows you to spend up on elsewhere in your lineup, and that's how you win a tournament.
Kristi, from an ownership perspective, I've sorted, in the sub 7-ish% range here on DraftKings. There's some pretty interesting plays here. I'm going to rattle off some of the guys I like. If you're going to play the chalk plays, you need to differentiate, in maybe 2 or 3 spots, a low-owned wide receiver, typically one of the better ways to do that. T. Higgins, 6,800. No one's going to be playing him because, like you said, everyone's going all the way up. Everyone's going down at wide receiver. The mid-tier, especially the high mid-tier, is going to get completely overlooked. And sure, I love Jamar Chase, but why can't T. Higgins get 10 targets, 100 yards, and a touchdown in this one? Ayuk, 6,200, looks pretty good. Michael Thomas is just 5,200. That if Carr has any sort of limitations, maybe it's not bombs to Chris Olave, maybe just peppers Michael Thomas over and over and over again. Zay Flowers, PPR machine, that plays well on DraftKings if he breaks one or gets a long touchdown. That looks good. Nico Collins. I mean, Jerry Jeudy, the low-owned wide receiver, it's loaded. Jalen Waddle, it is loaded at low-owned wide receiver. So don't just play, for your cash games. Of course, you're going to play Keenan Allen and Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson and all those good plays. But fix in, I think it's a 3-4 wide receiver week on DraftKings without question for the most part. If you're playing large field tournaments, there's so many good wide receivers in good spots, and so many of them aren't carrying a lot of ownership. Be sure to mix it up in at least 1, possibly 2 of those wide receiver spots in large field tournaments. Does that sound good to you, Kristi?
It really does. Yeah, you mentioned like Brandon Ayuk. What a great price point at hardly any ownership. Like you mentioned, T. Higgins. And and like you said, for
loaded.
me,
I could just keep going. Jordan Addison, Devonta Smith. I could just Gabe Davis. I could just keep going.
Yeah. It's incredible. So that's why it's a really great tournament week for sure.
Couple small pieces of news that came in that I just want to touch on. There is a report that Alvin Kamara is expected to handle a full workload in this spot. Load him up. I love Kamara today. And the other one, which personally I'm not touching either of these spots. Like if you're trying to win $1 million and you want to get crazy, maybe, but it says the Vikings will ride the hot hand today, and Cam Akers is the one in warmups running with the first team offense. So I'm personally not playing Madison or Akers today, but do with that information what you will.
All right, with the Kamara news, let's talk. So what's his price on FanDuel, Kristi? It's cheap, isn't it?
It's 6,500, and I know it's too bad that came out because I just thought he was just a smash play today. Mm-hmm. But he's great. Would you play him at 6,500
and save money to maybe upgrade something else over Kyren Williams, Zach Moss? Would you think he's an upgrade over Javonte Williams at 5,800?
I do. Yep. I just think he's in too good a spot, and hearing the news that he's going to have a full workload. Definitely upgrade.
Draft FanDuel, he's probably my favorite running back on the slate.
Same. I agree, TJ. Yep.
On DraftKings,
him and Josh Kelly would be my cash pairing on FanDuel.
On DraftKings, Kristi, you've got Kyren Williams, Zach Moss, both at 6K, Alvin Kamara at 6,100. Where does Kamara fall for you on that one?
I think I still like Kyren the best. Kyren Williams, and then Kamara's right there, and Moss probably 3. I bet they're all really, really great plays. But I think that's my.
And then TJ, how would you rank those 3? Because I think we should probably be moving Kamara up our boards a little bit here. How far up are you willing to play him over Moss and Kyren Williams?
I think he's still 3rd for me there.
All right. I would tend to agree, but I don't
But
think I
it's
would
so
fall.
close.
Yeah, I'm just playing 2 running backs in cash. You could probably play 3. Maybe Kamara is probably the odd man out for me, but that's basically where I stand as well. I think Kamara gets a little bit of an upgrade right now if you're trying to get the late breaking news, right? What did we have? Was that last week or the week before with I forgot who was it, Kristi?
For last week.
No, it's Kyron Williams in week 2 when Cam Akers was basically going to get benched. The late breaking news, taking advantage of that right before lock and football, is theoretically, I think, the biggest edge because 80% of people aren't messing with their lineups right now, probably even more than that. So if you have access to the ability to do that in MME or whatever, maybe putting a little more Alvin Kamara into your lineups isn't the worst thing in the world. A couple of bets I like real quick. I don't know who's betting the Jets, but I'm definitely on the Chiefs this week. They're down to -8. I bet them at -9.5. I doubled down at 8.5. You can find an 8 right now. Maybe the word that Zach Wilson is possibly going to get benched is keeping this line a little bit closer. That's the only thing I can really read into it. I love the Chiefs. A couple other props. Let me scroll through. I like Tank Dell receiving yards, and you can find his receptions. I think it was on MGM. Over 3.5 receptions for Tank Dell was -110 pre-show. I'm not sure if it's still there, but I like Tank Dell quite a bit. I hit on Bijan. Let me find one more for you guys. A lot of the things have moved. I put these out so early. Oh yeah, and I'm definitely on the Broncos over the Bears. The Broncos are bad, but the Bears are all time. Yeah, I literally wrote they have no offense, no defense, no coaching, no game plan, no players that matter, nothing. So that is the summary of the Bears for me. So I'm on the Broncos. It's a garbage game. I know they're on the road. There's a couple bets for you. All right, let's go to tight end. TJ, I'm going to start with you real quick for cash. Everyone's on Pat Freiermuth. I'm basically using him as a block just in case he gets a touchdown and a couple of receptions. I don't love him. I don't really like any tight ends this week. It's garbage position. It's either him or Logan Thomas for me in cash. If you need a couple extra bucks to make your lineup work, Logan Thomas would be my other guy on both DraftKings and FanDuel. TJ, how are you handling that in tournaments?
Gerald Everett is my highest owned tight end today. Like I mentioned, I'm trying to get to at least one Charger in every lineup. And so if I don't have Kelly, if I don't have Keenan Allen, then Everett's landing in a lot of them. I really like Tyler Higbee on what's his FanDuel price? Higbee's super cheap on FanDuel as well. And then I'm on both sites, minimum price, $4K on FanDuel, $2,500 on DraftKings. Nobody's playing him. I really like Tanner Hudson. He is the starting tight end for Cincinnati with no Irv Smith. He came in last game, elevated off of the practice squad, had 4 targets, 2 receptions. We know Tennessee is a big pass funnel defense. Chase is picking up a decent amount of ownership. I love Tanner Hudson today in tournaments. And then I'm getting to a lot of Kylan Granson to pair with Anthony Richardson, getting a lot of Durham Smythe to pair with Tua Tagovailoa. Smythe with Tua is one of my favorite little stacks of the week. You pick Waddle or Hill, maybe you can find a way to get both, and then get your Smythe and your Berrios in there to save salary. That's one of my favorite tournament things today.
The flop leg on the Durham Smythe chalk play of the week 3 lineups to get everything else that you wanted. All right, Kristi, tight end tournaments. It's gross. I don't know. You're basically, if you get outside, well, Travis Kelce's, if you get 12 points from a tight end today, you're doing like, you're jumping and you're going to Sizzler, you're doing whatever you want to do tonight.
You're exactly right. I do like Gerald Everett. I like that call by TJ. I think he's a good play. I know you mentioned Logan Thomas. Yeah, George Kittle is a guy that, like on DraftKings, I definitely want to make sure I have him because I have interest in Purdy for tournaments that we talked about earlier. Really, really like that play a lot. So if I'm paying up, that's the guy that I'm going to. Don't even mind a guy like Kincaid. I know he and Knox are kind of splitting it for that Buffalo game, but I think that's an interesting tournament play. I know the Bears are terrible, but, I think, Cole Kmet could maybe sneak a touchdown in there too. So don't mind that if you're playing some fields and looking for a bring back there. You could do worse. But yeah, those are some of the guys. And then, like you said, Freiermuth is going to be carry quite a bit of ownership just because he is a cheap price play on both sites.
That's a full fade for me outside of lineups with Kenny Pickett, just because of that ownership. I think that's the worst shot on the slate.
I agree. I agree. I don't. Yep.
If I had the stones on DraftKings, I would just play Logan Thomas over him personally. But if everyone's going to be on him in cash, if he's like 40% and he gets the touchdown, that's not where I'm going to try to make up the points today in cash.
I'm telling you, do Hudson instead at full min salary. He's got just as good of a chance at getting a touchdown. You get extra. I think that Hudson is the cash play. I know you don't need to pivot in cash, but you save $900 on DraftKings. You save $1,500 on FanDuel. I think that is the way to. I see Devin Bates in FanDuel cash. Can I put tight end with Hudson? I think that's a great cash play to find ways to get salary today on such an ugly tight end slate.
Yeah, it's literally if you get 7 on FanDuel out of your tight end, it's a good day if you ask me, right?
And I think you can get that with Hudson. I think that is the best cash play based on how badly we need salary.
All right. Real quick, defense thoughts. I don't like to talk defense a ton, but Kristi, there was, we got 2 backup quarterbacks coming in. One of the defenses everyone was going to play is the Browns, who now their offense has a backup quarterback, which I think certainly is not good for the defense because a couple of turnovers can lead to some points pretty quickly for the Ravens. What have you adjusted defense-wise from your tournament teams and thoughts?
Yeah, I do think the Ravens, they've certainly bumped up there. Like you've mentioned, Browns were kind of slated to be one of the more popular ones. I do like the Chargers D quite a bit too. I mean, we've talked about using AOC, but I think, they're at home. They're in a good matchup and not carrying a ton of ownership. I think you could throw the Colts in there too. Don't mind them as a defense too. And then at the top, just even paying up. I like the San Francisco 49ers defense. I think that's a good play. Pairing that with McCaffrey, Eagles too, and just maybe spending up just a little bit to get different as well.
If I had to choose, salary wasn't a thing, I'd take the Eagles against Sam Howell. There's already they have 3 sacks and the game hasn't even started, and they'll probably get 3 more. So in the actual game. So I like those. Real quick, TJ, defense thoughts?
Ravens, Chargers, and Saints are my 3 favorites, but I do love the pay-ups. Eagles, 49ers, and Cowboys I think are all great plays. I do think there are 2 full-out punts that you can go to, and it's going to feel uncomfortable, but defense is very random, and I think you can do it. So on FanDuel, I don't think I would do the Bills, but on DraftKings, where they're 2,700, I think they are totally viable to do in tournaments. And then the Arizona Cardinals, their defense has been really, really good at racking up fantasy points this year. That's going to be a fast-paced game. They're almost min price on both sites. Arizona Cardinals are, believe it or not, my cash defense today.
Oh, wow. All right. Let's get to some questions. You can go to the live stream chat in the RotoGrinders Discord, or you can post them in the YouTube, and we'll get to as many as we can in the
To answer your question, Britt, how am I getting these expensive players in cash? I'm playing Josh Downs, Tanner Hudson, and the Cardinals defense.
That'll do it. That gets you get you a McCaffrey. That gets you some of these other guys that you want to have access to today. All right, I'm going to the Discord first. So if you're jamming in questions there, I see a couple, and we're going to answer them right now. Shirtless Bobby. I don't think that's Bobby Gomes from the 9:30 show, but it could be. He wants to know FanDuel cash. Kristi, I'll go to you on this one. McCaffrey, and then either Josh Palmer and Tank Dell or Jamar Chase with James Cook.
I would say I like McCaffrey. I think you need to have him in there. So I'm going McCaffrey 1.
Me too.
Yeah, I would probably take McCaffrey. I do not have McCaffrey on FanDuel. I've got Kamara, Kyron Williams is my highest priced running back on FanDuel currently. Would you play Kamara over Sanders? So this is probably, it's for both sites here. Sanders 6,600, FanDuel, Kamara 6,500. Kristi, which one you got?
I personally would. That's the route I'm going.
I think they're both great, but I would too.
I have why not both on my cash team on FanDuel, and I would play Sanders as a reasonable discount on DraftKings if the salary does something for you. Sure, I would also play the 2 6K Moss and Kyron Williams over Kamara at the moment too.
On FanDuel, my cash, if I were playing cash there, I'm not, but if I were, I think I would be running 3 running backs. It would be Sanders, Kamara, and Josh Kelly.
All right, all the way down to Kelly. I'm torn on Kelly. I'm going to go with Kyron. I
Kelly
understand.
has the second best, like the second highest touchdown odds on the entire day behind Christian McCaffrey.
The sports books are more the Vegas is built on sucker bets, so that's all I'll say on that one for Mr. Josh Kelly. All right, let's go to the YouTubes. Let's see here. Texans or Patriots defense? I think is that a DraftKings question?
Yes, I believe so. I don't mind either. I'd probably go Texans, but I do actually have some Patriots defense too.
Yeah, I like the
mostly
Texans
in lineups with Zeke.
Against Kenny Pickett, I have no problem. I think I rolled out the Texans on the tournament team for sure today. Kristi, you on board with that?
I am on board with that. Yep, I like that call.
Yeah. FanDuel single entry, Tank Dell or Cortland Sutton. If there's a play, as much as I like Tank Dell, there's a player up against the Bears.
Yep.
You take that player against the Bears. That's Cortland Sutton for me.
That's right.
TJ?
Yeah, same here.
All right. Hurts or Fields for a DraftKings tournament? I'm done with Fields. I know it's against the Broncos. If this is the week Justin Fields wins the tournament, so be it. Not for me. So that's definitely Hurts for me. TJ, I see you squinting at me.
Well, no, it's a tough question because they're obviously two totally different price ranges. Which Hudson? People are asking in chat, which Hudson? The one that's playing, the one for the Bengals. The Saints one is not dressing. Don't play him. It's the one for the Bengals who is starting. In a vacuum, obviously it's Hurts. But for saving salary going up against the Broncos team that just allowed 70, I would rather build a team around Hurts. Around Fields.
I'm done. I want to. If Chicago has a big game against Denver, it wouldn't surprise me. But I still need to see. I don't even know if they're capable of putting an offensive game plan together at the moment. All right, let's see a couple more. FanDuel single entry: Tyreek Hill and Gabe Davis, or Diggs and Waddle. So we're stacking up the game there. I mean, everybody would choose Diggs and Waddle without question. That has me thinking Tyreek Hill and Gabe Davis might be the way to go.
I do too.
Yep.
Does that sound good? All right.
I like it.
And getting access to Tyreek Hill, never a bad thing.
Right.
I saw something where if Justin Jefferson was getting someone's amount of targets or something, he would be on pace for like 2,700 yards. But then if Tyreek Hill was getting it, he would be on pace for 4,700 yards. It's insane how efficient and how good Tyreek Hill is in the Mike McDaniel scheme. He is unleashed as the absolute most uncoverable player in football right now. So Tyreek Hill, getting access to him in a tournament, never a bad thing. Is there going to be an MLB show today? No, there will not be an MLB show today. I believe our last baseball show was yesterday. Me and TJ and Cards were on that. If you were on us all weekend throughout the year, we greatly appreciate you watching on that one. All right, we're going to work backwards from the Discord chat. They're calling you out, Kristi.
We got one in YouTube we just missed quick that I want to hit. It's DK Cash. It says at TJ, so obviously I got to answer it. DK Cash, Russ and Mims, or AOC and Jacoby. I would do the AOC one, but I wouldn't do Jacoby. I would probably do Tutu Atwell. I guess maybe if you already have Nakua, you wouldn't want to, but still, I like Atwell better than Jacoby Myers today. And let's get these likes way up. We got almost like 800 people watching. We should be at 400 likes easy, but why don't we say at over 200, we will give our favorite GPP hot takes before lock here as well.
All right, Kristi, this one's for you, and I'll answer it as well. FanDuel, your favorite cash game quarterback. Much different than DraftKings today.
Cash game quarterback. I think on FanDuel today, I think Anthony Richardson just makes a lot of sense. So
high five. That's who I got in cash currently as well. Yep. TJ, you're going to agree with that. That's my guy. You can pay up. You can get to a Josh Allen. You can get to a Tua. I think at 8,000 is pretty reasonable. But I'm on Anthony Richardson personally at 7,600. Let's see a couple more. Kamara, Sanders, or Cooks for the Bills for a FanDuel tournament. Kristi.
You said what?
Miles Sanders or Cooks? I'm assuming that's James Cook.
For tournaments, I like Cook. I really do. Like that game environment, so I'm going Cook.
All right. FanDuel large field favorite quarterback wide receiver stack. I'll go to you, TJ, first.
Tua with Waddle, Barrios, and Smythe.
All right. I'm going to go Joe Burrow to Chase and Higgins. Kristi?
I will go. I do like the 201 a lot, but I also like give me Cousins, Jefferson, and Hawkinson.
Yep, I think that's a pretty good one as well. It's a wide open week, if you ask me. A couple more on YouTube. Akers, okay, play to get different. It's the hot hand, and I understand Akers was running. TJ said, I did not see the news. I'm going to trust TJ that Akers was running with the starting lineup. But there are so many, and I mean so many running back plays where we've got McCaffrey, Pollard, Josh Jacobs, you've got Williams, you've got Moss, you've got Miles Sanders, we've got Kamara, right? So many guys who we know are going to get all or the majority of the work.
Mm-hmm.
I even think in a tournament, trying to get different, you're wasting your money today.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
TJ, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah,
Deebo Samuel officially will play for what it's worth.
Yep. All right, a couple more. Let's see. AJ Brown. Yeah, I love this. The problem with AJ Brown is that his name isn't Jamar Chase. It's not Stephon Diggs. It's not Keenan Allen. It's not Justin Jefferson, and it's not Tyreek Hill. And I love AJ Brown, but what's the ceiling of AJ Brown today? 8
It's always
for 1.
super high.
It's high, but it's not like Tyreek Hill or maybe it's around the Keenan Allen range. I don't know, but it's very tough for just a few $100s more to not play some of these elite receivers. Maybe that does make AJ Brown, who Hurts isn't even really popular either, an elite tournament play today. Kristi, does that make sense to you?
It does. It really does. Yep. No, I would agree.
I think if I was playing AJ Brown, he would not be the highest salaried wide receiver on my roster. You need access to one of those top 5 or 6 guys on every team you make, in my opinion.
For me, it's just if I'm playing AJ Brown, it's with Devontae Smith. It's with Jalen Hurts. All my AJ Brown exposure is in Philadelphia stacks.
I agree.
Dell or Palmer for FanDuel Cash. This is from DG Gold. Kristi, what's your thoughts on that one?
For FanDuel Cash, I think I would go Dell, but I do like them both.
I would play Palmer in that one, but they're not on my.
They're not on.
I'm getting sucked into the DeAndre Hopkins on FanDuel at 63.
Such a good price.
Yeah, I like the Dells, the even Thielens and Palmers. I like them a lot more on DraftKings than on FanDuel. Where
I agree. Yep.
Legit salary savers on FanDuel, where Hopkins is that same price. Those great 6K running backs are the same price. I would just rather find elsewhere to go.
Yeah,
I also think on FanDuel Hopkins, and you've got Zay Flowers that are just a little bit better plays, I think, in that range.
All right, so we're going to be at lineup block by the time everybody sees it. So it's been fun.
Michael Thomas at 5,900. That's fantastic on FanDuel.
Exactly.
So the 3 late games today, and we've got Sunday night, we've got the Chiefs and Jets, and Sunday night, we've got the Giants and Seattle. Chris, do you have any thoughts or bets or anything specific you're looking to do? So one of the things, right, I have Keenan Allen's in my flex from the late games, right? I made sure to move him there. I can go if, my lineup's looking garbagey around then. I mean, I also have AOC at quarterback. I've got Josh Palmer on DraftKings too. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to make the call, but he's there to maybe swap to a Tony Pollard, or I can just, if it goes really horribly, just get completely off the board. So that's something to keep an eye on for the late games. Do you have any thoughts, bets, anything specific from those?
Yeah, I don't have any specific bets, but yeah, I like your point to that. Especially if you, are needing to make some changes, it's always important to keep that flex position, like you said, with the Keenan Allen.
Well, I think Keenan Allen's gonna be the highest owned player on DraftKings, at least from the cash game perspectives that I'm looking at today. So if it's ugly for me, this is the easiest swap in the world to make.
It really is. Yep.
TJ, you got anything? Did you get any bets in for football? Any late slate thoughts?
No bets, but I'm gonna have a lot of exposure to the late slate in my main lineups. I have a Charger in every lineup today. I'm trying to get to a decent amount of exposure to the 49ers. I have lots and lots and lots of content coming for the evening game tonight. I will have a FanDuel and DraftKings showdown slate article dropping right away, followed by a Prize Picks article for the game tonight, as well as I will be on the pre-log show with Jeep tonight.
What time does that start for everybody?
I believe we begin at about 5:45. Sorry, I'm talking my own time instead of Eastern. Yeah, 7:45, 30 minutes before the game.
All right. Did you get up to watch the London game this morning, TJ?
No, I did not. I slept through the first half, and then I was too busy adjusting lineups for the second half. I basically wouldn't have had to change anything this morning if Miles Sanders didn't play. Like I made a build where I was taking a stand where I had about 75% Chuba Hubbard. But then as soon as that adjusted, I had a lot of stuff I had to fix. So I was listening to the RotoGrinders content instead of watching the game.
Oh, pumping the brand. Always got to do it. Did you happen to catch, at least on Twitter, the highlights of the Toy Story? This looked pretty cool. Like if video games played and looked like,
I guess talking on the previous shows how terrible it was.
I thought it looked pretty good. It looked, if you do the side-by-side comparisons, it looked pretty good in terms of like showing what was on the field with the player tracking. I thought it was pretty. I don't think I would watch it, even though I am a big Disney fan. I would rather watch the real game. But to watch the Jags and the Falcons, maybe getting them not in real life would make that game a little bit more watchable. Kristi, did you catch any of that?
I didn't yet. No, I saw some of it on just online and stuff, but no, I haven't caught it yet.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for the show. Real quick, let me just think. I don't really have the Zeke yardage bets have moved up now that he's going to get more run. Josh Palmer's 43.5 yards on certain sorts of sports books. Go hit the over on that one for the late slate. And
I think I got over 60.5 yards for Jalen Waddle on Prize Picks today. I was shocked.
Yeah, because he was out, and yeah, I think that was a little low too. So that was one I got on as well. Yeah, everyone have fun. Tune into TJ's show later at 7:45 Eastern. If you're playing Showdown, you can check his articles out as they come out throughout the day. Kristi, good finally running back into you on a show. I'll be back. I think I'm filling in next Sunday as well on the show, so we'll have some fun here. Other than that, everybody, thanks for watching. Click the like button on the way out for TJ and Kristi. I'm Brit. Thanks for watching, and we out you.